Hey, Greg.
Hey, how are you?
Yeah, oh, pretty damn good.
Hi, Heidi. Hi, Andy. Hi, Henry. Hi, Galaxy S20 Ultra 5G. That doesn't sound like an ANGFA member.
He started the meeting.
Did he?
He was the host, I believe. I think.
Okay, very good.
It's me, Steve Hammond, North Queensland.
How are you?
Sorry, I was out enjoying this. Good, mate. Yeah, thanks.
Very good.
There we go. Sorry. Shed looks terrible for me. My mobile phone.
Are you doing some work in your shed?
No. I've come up to see a mate. And yeah, we're not far from Deering Creek, where the Molanders come from.
Very nice. What's the weather like? I can see you're in a t-shirt.
Yeah, and shorts, of course. It's North Queensland.
Rub it in, why don't you?
Yeah, it's going to get down to about 15 up here tonight, but yeah, it's not too bad. A few more scotches and I won't care.
Very good. Very good. Well, I've just logged on a little bit earlier than 7:30 to make sure that my end was working, which it is. That's good.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah,
good.
I logged in early just to see if there's anyone around if they needed or anything. So it's working.
It is.
Trouble is, if I go to the other side of the shed, there's no mobile service though.
Right. Galaxy S25G, is that your Zoom name because that's what you use, or?
Oh, hang on. I'll have to fix that up. Yeah, it's a new phone. I forgot to configure it more.
Fine.
Meeting settings. All right. Do you know Zoom well enough to tell me where I've got to change all the details on the Zoom? Participants meeting. Why did it do that?
Don't ask me for any technical advice.
Yeah.
G'day, Ron.
I'm supposed to be the techo dude too, so. Okay. Meeting settings. ANGFA. I'll mute myself. I might even log out and I'll come back in again shortly.
Okay. I'll see you soon.
Ron O'Reilly, is that Leo?
No, that's Leo's brother, or is that Leo?
I don't know.
It's not Leo, and I don't particularly like being referred to as Leo's brother.
Sorry, dude.
Even though I am.
Hi, Ron.
G'day, how are you?
Good. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
All righty. I was just going, okay.
So, Ron, you crazy about Rads like your brother, Leo?
No.
Oh. What's your speciality?
I don't pick favourites. They're all my favourite.
Oh, they are.
That's a good answer.
But you can only keep so many.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
G'day, Steve. Oh, Steve Hume. Okay, sorry, I've just made the connection. Very good.
I'm back.
You do sound like you're underwater.
For some reason, it automatically records. So I guess to try and work out why it's recording. I don't want it to record.
G'day, Peter.
Don't tell me Unmack's here.
He is. There he is.
Peter.
How's it going?
Good, mate. How's things?
All right.
That discussion we had very briefly the other day on Facebook Messenger.
Yep.
That meeting hasn't gone ahead yet. We're hoping to get that together in the next couple of days. So
Yep.
I may need you to make up some sort of a blurb.
Yep, I can blurb.
That's good. Okay. Stop video. I'm trying to work out why this is recording. I don't want it to record.
I'm recording it at my end. You shouldn't need to at yours.
Oh, okay. So maybe that's why it says recording.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. I don't have to. I'll ignore that then.
Very good.
Yeah, hey, Peter, I'm up at Miller again too, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to try and get onto that property again too and see if I can have a dig around in their creek. Hi. The one
Raining up there as usual, is it?
up.
Oh, is it already time?
No, I refer to it as clouding. Hello.
Hello. Oh my God, I've had such a good day. I was just out biking. I was out biking in the dark and I just got home. Oh my God, it's 7:22. Are you guys ready? Steve. Oh my God, I was out biking and I stopped by a friend's house and she gave me a glass of wine. Shh. And oh my God.
You can't half tell.
I was
No, you can't,
in the dark. It's so awesome here. How are you doing?
Good, mate. We had a bit of drama coming up here. One of the wheels came loose and just about came off the trailer and near the police. And just north of Rolling Stone. Oh, just north of Rolling Stone, near the hotel.
G'day,
So I had to go back
Paul.
to town and get a whole new stub.
Where are you, Steve? What do you
Up
mean?
at Miller. Yeah, up at Miller.
I can't hear anything.
That's because you don't stop talking.
I'm deaf.
I'm up at Miller near the where Peter took you. Anyway. Everybody's muted now.
You can leave yourselves unmuted till we start. That's fine. It's a good time to catch up.
Hey, Peter, you look like a badass with that beard, mate. I reckon you need to get the hat like Heisenberg. You really suits you. Do you hear me?
I can hear you.
Peter,
Can't hear
you're
you.
muted.
He's unmuted. He's unmuted me. He wants me to sit down. So behind us, we have our fish tank. This is my office. I told him he has to do it because he has double. Are you ready, Greg? Are you ready?
Yep.
I'm excited to learn about your shipping container.
Good.
Hey, that looked pretty cool, didn't it?
Okay, we're ready. This is so exciting. I'm so excited.
We can't
I'm going
start
to mute
until we're all
myself
here.
anyway.
G'day, Gary.
Let's make it big. Who's coming? I put it on my Facebook, so maybe people from Arizona, but then it's 3 in the morning. And I thought, oh,
G'day,
shit.
Chris Lemon. Awesome.
Look at Peter's fish tank. Isn't that exciting behind us?
It's very exciting.
Greg, are you taking us into your room when you talk or no? I mean, are you taking us into your shipping container?
I am via photos. I'm sequestered in my office, which has got the heater on because it's
No,
bloody
that's
cold
fine.
here.
That's going to be too complicated. Yeah. Oh, good. You can do it photos.
G'day, Timbo.
I haven't even closed the garage because I was biking in the dark and I was listening to frogs. There's nobody out here in Canberra, and I'm like biking around in the dark, and there's frogs. It's like so awesome. I'm like so overstimulated. I need to put me on mute.
That's a lot of information, Rochelle.
I'm so excited, and I also had a glass of wine. I don't know. Let's chat, Phil. Look, I've just taken over. Peter's probably like, oh my God.
He's having his lunch, dinner.
G'day, Gerard. G'day, Peter. When you connect. In the next 4 minutes, everyone's welcome to unmute and have a chat. That's all good with me.
Absolutely.
Timbo, Uncle Tim.
I am.
Hey. All right.
They've got quite a good crowd.
Oh,
Hey, Chris.
how you going?
Good. Should see all our babies.
Yes,
We've got thousands.
very good.
Yeah.
I sold you good. I gave you good stock. You know.
That's right. They're just going crazy. One tank, you can't even put this, just can't see through it for all the fry.
That's good. I just had a call from a guy that wanted 2,000 baby rainbows. So there you go.
Awesome. Awesome. Very
Did you
good.
have 2,000 rainbows to give you?
No, I've probably got 500 or so that were stragglers from last season, but it's too cold for me to go moving anything at the moment.
Too
Okay.
cold for you or too cold for them?
Well, I've been wondering the last few days who in their right mind would have considered going into cold water natives was a good thing.
It's warm enough.
We've had an average of 10 degrees here the last 4 days, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness me. I'm assuming Richard is Richard Blake? No, I don't know.
Yep.
Hello. Hey,
Yep.
how are you, SPQR?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Very good. Happy birthday for the other day. Phil.
Thank
Ooh.
you.
Phil,
John Cousins. Welcome.
John.
And I saw Will pop up somewhere. G'day, Will. Welcome. Will Barker. Jared.
Yeah. Oh,
Whoa.
What did you
happened there?
do?
Who did that?
Someone shared their screen.
No biggie. Whoa, Timbo. Did you do that?
No, I don't know how to share my screen, mate.
it says we're viewing Rodney's screen.
Hang on.
We all wait. for Hammer, are we?
G'day, Rodney. No.
Oh,
Getting
pretty.
ready.
looks very nice in the background.
I'm not on.
Mm.
Here we are.
Oh.
Thank you.
We're back.
Who was that, by the way, that did that? Was it me?
That was me.
Said Richard.
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
Richard.
That was me.
How are
Rodney.
you, Rod?
Yeah, good, thanks.
Thanks for
Yeah.
joining us.
Can you see me? Video?
I can, no, your video's not on.
Right. There you go.
Yeah.
Hey.
How are you?
Good. Very good. G'day, Bolo. If you've got the bandwidth, then you should be able to have your video on. I just made it so that when everyone joins the meeting, their video and audio is off, but you can have your video on. Just sometimes people like Peter Unmack have a really noisy computer fan that just drives us all nuts. So
No, it's just
Here I am. Hello.
very good. Helen, g'day.
Oh, he's going to talk about gobies. Have to listen to gobies.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We'll give it another couple of minutes for people to join. I'm noticing Michael's missing. That's interesting. Damien, welcome.
Thank you. This is my first meeting.
Awesome. Welcome.
There we go.
A few housekeeping things, which I'll reiterate shortly. During the presentations, if you can keep your mic muted, and then if you have, hey, Martin Salisa, hey, how are you? If you can keep your mic muted, and if you want to ask a question, there's a chat box down the bottom. I'm assuming everyone knows how to use everything.
Speak.
You can write in the chat box.
I have spoken.
Can you hear Ross?
Can you hear me, Greg?
Yes.
I can.
Yeah.
G'day.
Okay.
Where are you? G'day, Ross.
G'day, Greg. How are we?
Good. Nice
Hey,
to
Ross.
talk to you today.
G'day, Rodney.
G'day. Welcome.
And Chris. Ron.
Look, naturalist. Awesome guy.
Tim. Oh,
Hi.
g'day, Tim. Up the
Hey.
top there.
Hey, Ross.
Right. Did I see Coatsy there before or not? No.
Coatsy is right here. Yep.
Yep.
Sorry, just to finish what I was saying with keeping your mic muted. If you want to ask a question with my short presentation, I'd like to answer questions as I go. So you can either hold your hand up if you've got your video on, and and then unmute yourself, and I'll pause, or else you could write a question in the chat box. Hopefully, we'll keep an eye on the chat box. I don't know what Michael wants to do when he does his Goby talk, whether he wants to answer questions along the way. G'day, Damien.
How you going?
Good. Awesome. Keith. G'day, Keith Martin.
G'day, Mr. Martin.
G'day, Keith.
Dylan, welcome.
Hey, Keith, I'm higher up the hill than you are today.
Yeah.
Up in Northern, mate.
Quite a few people from North Queensland. Helen, Keith, Steve.
It's a little bit more over the hill than you are, luckily, Steve.
That's true.
Peter, I might hand over
Thanks,
to
Peter.
you as national president. Have you finished eating? Have you got a mouthful?
No, I'm just chewing on some beef jerky here. It's my dinner.
It's disgusting.
We'll give it a couple more minutes.
All right. Okay. Cool. All right. Well, all right. And then between the two presentations, we'll have a chance to go and have a toilet break or grab a cup of tea or a glass of double shot of whiskey or whatever you might need at the time.
No whiskey for me.
Damien, how did you get onto ANGFA?
It was actually, I did an interview with Peter a few months ago.
Oh, I think I saw your name come up. Did you, was there a...
It never got uploaded because we kind of had a falling out.
What?
It's in the internal, me and the channel's creator kind of had a falling out. So because it was an interview to make a video that was going to be posted on YouTube.
Yeah.
It was about the blue eye.
Right.
The redfin, yeah.
Okay.
But I've always actually looked into ANGFA. I actually joined the Facebook group before all that anyway.
Cool.
So, yeah.
And was Peter helpful?
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you understand his accent?
Yep.
Very good. Did you resolve the differences with whatever it was you were trying to do?
Oh no, we were trying to we had this little group of a few people. We'd record interviews and try and get him posted to this one YouTube channel, but there was an argument, and then it was just myself and the original creator left, and it's just fallen. But don't worry about it.
Okay. All right. No problem.
Sorry.
G'day, Neville Amos. Welcome.
Hello.
Rob Wager. Welcome.
Yeah, there we go. Unmuted. How you going?
Good. Michael, welcome.
Yo.
I'm relieved to see you. All right. Peter, I'm going to have you now.
How you going? Is Leo there?
Hello, Mr. Wager. Long time no see.
I'm here, doing well. Thank you.
G'day, Leo. Welcome.
Leo, I've got some Raz for you. When can we catch up, mate?
Probably be a couple of weeks. I'm a bit busy at the moment, but
Yeah, it's pretty
Okay.
unreliable.
That's fine. They're safe and secure till then.
Good, excellent.
You inherited some blue eyes as well. I have to take it easy. Transfer it
Okay.
from quarantine tank to pond. Okay.
Peter, have you finished chewing beef jerky? When you finish swearing, if you could unmute, that'd be awesome.
It's more fun just to look like you're talking and then everyone, oh, you're muted, you're muted. Unmute, unmute.
Peter, fill up your fish tank.
Yeah, I was going to say, Peter, if you need some water, I can get some from up here.
G'day, Glenn, welcome.
Thanks, mate. G'day.
G'day, John Lenigan, welcome.
Gee, Peter, you look really fuzzy, man.
I'm trying to look like you, John. Just with a bit more colour.
I think Lenigan's in the loo.
Michael swiping mosquitoes.
I'm going to hand it over to Peter and we're going to do a quick. Where's kids?
I think Graham just arrived.
Hello, everybody.
G'day, Graham. How are you?
I've been here for hours. Don't listen to the vicious rumours and lies.
Welcome, having just joined. Well done. Peter, over to you.
All right, well, we're up to 64 participants so far. I'm sure there'll be a few that keep streaming in, but in the interest of time, I guess we should probably get the show rolling a little bit.
Can you
Presume
speak
you guys
louder?
can hear me okay? Okay.
Louder.
Louder? All right. Well, welcome everybody. I guess this is kind of a bit of a first, but I guess it's kind of a partnership with ANGFA National and the regional groups to try and get a few meetings together for people since half the country's in lockdown. We haven't been able to hold regular meetings for a while, so figured it'd be about time to get folks together and talk fish since we haven't been able to do it for a long time. So we're going to start off with a bit of a roundup from the regional groups. Probably not too much to report from ANGFA National. Membership numbers keep ticking in and tick up a little bit. I think we're just a bit over 200 members right at the moment. We're probably slightly behind on Fish as a whole, but that's normal. Always need more articles, and I don't know, that's probably about all I've got to say from National's perspective, I think. Things are going fairly well. Greg Martin, you want to say something about Vic?
Yeah, well, we're enjoying lockdown version 7 or 8 or whatever it might be. So every time I try and organise a field trip, somebody else organises a lockdown. So I've ceased doing that for the moment. In terms of the ongoing projects in conjunction with Native Fish Australia and Middle Creek Farm, there's a lot of stuff poised to go, but we've got to actually be able to get out into the field and collect what we need to collect. So it's kind of exciting and kind of really frustrating. And I think that's all I can report. John, do you want to add something to that? John Lenigan? No?
All right. Let's hand pass across to Graham Finson for ANGFA Queensland.
Hey, everybody. My name's Graham. I'm the president of ANGFA Queensland. For those people who actually don't know me, I see there's a lot of people on here who I do recognise, and with our drive for membership and reminding everyone to who might not be an ANGFA member, please join. It's only $45. It's not a big deal. It's not going to break the budget. So come on in, come and join, help support the native fish of Australia. So ANGFA Queensland, the first thing I'm going to wave the banner of is we are still going to go ahead with the Combined Clubs field trip to 1770 in October. So hopefully New South Wales, Victoria, Western Australia, South Australia, you can all come to Queensland in October, so we can all meet up in the township of 1770, just south of Gladstone in October. If you can't make it, well, we're going to have a whole bunch of Queenslanders there. We've got about a dozen Queenslanders who have already put their hands up and said they're going to attend Combined Club field trip. ANGFA Queensland is forging on. We've breezed through our various lockdowns. Obviously, we're doing things much better outside of the Southern Mexicans. We are actually having our face-to-face meetings, although our last meeting, which was, I didn't think it would actually go as well as what it did. We were still in a mandated face mask wearing situation, and we decided to still have a meeting, and I thought we'd only get the usual 6 people who turn up early to help set up, maybe 8. But we end up having about 24 people who turned up. So thank you if those people are have joined us. It was actually a really interesting meeting where we actually had John Hodgins from the Threatened Species Unit here for Queensland. He's with the Queensland government, and he's wanting to have a chat to ANGFA in order to help him and his governmental organisation work out how they're actually going to save the growing pile of threatened fish, which is rapidly overwhelming him in Queensland. Membership's still ticking along. The club is still financially viable and is moving ahead. We are still now coming into spring, so we're planning on getting our field trips kicking off. We tend not to have them over winter, and with COVID, there's a reluctance for people to want to open up their fish rooms for a crowd of potential COVID carriers to turn up to their homes, which is understandable. So we haven't had too many over winter at this point in time, but we're looking at like getting back into some of the creeks and streams around Brisbane when we finally kick back off in spring. I think that's it, unless I've missed something or someone wants me to elaborate on something else.
We envy you.
We've elected a different dear leader up here in Queensland.
Peter.
Thanks for that, Graham. We'll move on to Heidi from far north Queensland.
Whoa.
Heidi, can you mute yourself? Heidi? Heidi?
He's been on the helium.
Heidi, can you mute yourself and unmute again? There seems to be something mysterious with the audio. And now it's cryptic. Heidi?
Send her a message, Greg.
I'm sure that's what she normally sounds like.
I caught some of it, but not a lot. Heidi, can you hear us?
She's messaging you, mate.
Oh, okay. Technical difficulties. Okay.
While we're waiting on Heidi, a question.
I think she'll need.
Any updates on Gunther Smeater these days? For those that didn't know, Gunther had a fairly bad stroke about a month or so ago, I think it was.
I could definitely mention to everyone on the status of Gunther. So he's come out of his stroke. He's still in care, so he's still in hospital. And with all the malarkey going over lockdown, his family have actually found it quite difficult to go in and see him, and also his close friends and other associates. So he's currently going into the initial phases of therapy, and everything's actually looking really rosy. He has got a little bit of, for those people who don't know, Gunther has had a stroke. He actually has got, he's quite compass, and he has good use of his hands, but he does have a little bit of physical impairment. But nonetheless, he's come out of it pretty well, considering how it was actually poorly diagnosed, and they were actually treating him for an infection initially. And so, for those people who don't know, if you have a stroke, if people can get in early, your diagnosis is actually really good. But sadly, they misdiagnosed him and didn't get on top of it super quickly.
Thanks for that, Graham. Heidi's ready to try again.
Can I just
Don't hold your breath
suggest-
on anything.
No, it sounds really good.
That's
Can
it
I
better?
just suggest everyone just pause their cameras at the moment, just to help some of the more NBN threatened of us?
Okay, while that's happening, I'll continue on. So I'm Heidi. I'm the organizer for the FNQ branch here in Cairns, where we're located. We did have a scheduled August face-to-face meeting, but due to our snap lockdown and the restrictions that were in place, it kind of sort of limited us as far as not necessarily about holding the meeting, because they had been lifted before our scheduled meeting, but the restrictions that were still in place due to our meeting location. So we've now rescheduled for the 17th of September. Our speaker is a fish ecologist who is talking about sooty grunters and other natives. He's a local to the area. We've been working with the Jabberoos, which is a volunteer group for our wetlands, which is across the road from where Al and I are living, which is called Katana Wetlands. So I mean, some people, if they've been up here, might have actually been there to visit. It is run by the council. However, the Jabberoos are a group of volunteers who actually do a lot of the maintenance and a lot of the, I guess, monitoring of what goes on there, and pushes for, information boards to be put up. And they're trying to actually enhance the environmental education side of things and encourage more school groups to come out with their students and stuff. So I've been working with a couple of the volunteers on trying to get something with that up and running. Probably won't be happening for another year or so because of, it's a lot of work behind the scenes. We've also done some collaborative work with Tree Force, which is a Trees for the Cairns environment, and they invited us along to one of their citizen science projects, which was looking at the native fish and the health of the freshwater creek area. They also did some planting and revegetation along that as well. And yeah, so that's what's happening in our world.
Awesome.
Great.
Awesome. Thanks, Heidi.
Heidi, that was really good.
Now, I don't think we've got anyone from Western Australia here off the top of my head. I don't see Graham Thompson. So Graham from ANGFA New South Wales was going to say a couple of words, but he was held up and can't make it. Anyone else from ANGFA New South Wales want to say anything?
Yeah, I'm here. It's Richard. I'm the Vice President of New South Wales, the errant state at the moment, both in terms of the club and ANGFA, COVID. And I'd like to apologize for our state's abysmal handling of COVID right now. Yeah, we really haven't had much to do. We've been in lockdown for like 3 months now. And being winter, we haven't had many meetings anyway. And doubtful we'll have any more for the rest of the year. So not too much to update on New South Wales end.
All right. Well, at least you're here, I suppose. That's one positive.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Richard. I guess we'll hand over to Greg. He'll tell you about how the meeting's going to be run and how to post questions and stuff.
Okay.
And then we'll record both talks separately. I assume Michael's okay with that. If not, you can message me and we might record it if you don't want us to. But anyway, I'll pass over to you, I think, Greg.
Great. All right. Once again, thanks everyone for checking in. That's awesome. I went through housekeeping before, but in case somebody's joined since then, keep your mic muted unless you have a question or something pertinent to add. my mini presentation, I'd like to, if there's any questions, I'd like you to ask them as I go rather than at the end. After my lot, then we'll have a 5 or a 7 or 8 minute break where you can rush off and grab refreshment or whatever you need, and then we'll reconvene for Michael. Does that sound all right? He asks a crowd of muted people. All right. Yep. Okay, so I'm going to begin.
So the one little thing you didn't mention, Greg, was if you have questions as you go, feel free to throw them in the chat. And Greg and I are both kind of monitoring the chat. So if something comes up and Greg misses it, I'll bring it up so that he can ask questions as we go. Because sometimes it's a little bit easier with the chat to pop them up as you go, and we'll just deal with them. Thanks, guys.
Can anyone see my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, I can't actually see the chat bar anymore with the shared screens. So here we go. All right, so I've had a fish room for many years.
Have you been recorded, Greg?
The recording started at the start of the meeting. It's recording. But of course, when you build a fish room, you don't sort of think that it's something you're going to have for a long, long time. So, well, I didn't pay enough attention to really the things that I should have done more diligently. For example, my old fish room was put together sort of hastily, not really bearing in mind that it would need to survive Melbourne horrific winters and then also those odd 43-degree days in summer. So it was a badly insulated room. It had lots and lots of heating, and in summer it had a room air conditioner, which was often running even at night time in the hottest part of summer. So I had considered building a different fish room for a long time. And then finally, when COVID came and begun to have an impact last year, I thought time was right. So I don't know if you're reading this, but I'll just quickly read it through. It's
Can you go to slide mode? You're actually in your screen display. You need to just show the whole PowerPoint.
What are you looking at? Aspects of my old fish room now?
I am, but I'm looking at your whole screen rather than just the PowerPoint. You know what it's saying?
Greg, down the bottom of your screen, there'll be on the right-hand side, you'll find a little display that says with a camera.
Should say slideshow.
Slideshow, perfect.
That's it.
But without your notes.
Thank you. Okay, I'm a novice.
Oh, well.
I'll admit it.
Can you turn your notes off?
Hey,
we will provide guidance.
All right.
You're in the wrong display screen. Pop back out of there.
And you let me run this meeting. Unbelievable.
I thought you knew how to use PowerPoint.
All right. Don't panic. It's all good.
Okay.
He's in need of technical support.
Okay, so I'm going to try again.
Hey, if worst comes to worst, we can live with it, mate. We can live with it.
Share screen.
Leo, can you do a bit of a song and dance while we're waiting?
Hang on.
Sure.
What can you see now?
That's better.
Beautiful.
Okay. All right. Sorry, everybody. All right. So, yes, the problems were it wasn't well insulated. It had 3 levels of aquariums, which seemed like a great idea at the time, except, of course, the top level you can't access except with a ladder, and the bottom level, it's too close to the ground, so I wasn't inclined to do the work that I needed to do on the bottom tanks. It was just badly planned. And, of course, I thought I'll need about 6 PowerPoints for all those tanks, which was completely misguided. I actually should have had about 26. So how do I go to the next slide, Smarty Pantsers?
Hit the right arrow.
Right arrow or page down. Page down's easier.
Okay, we still good?
Yep.
Okay, so I had a list of things that I wanted to incorporate in the new room, and I've got them there. I wanted it to be well insulated because even though I've got an enormous solar array, I was still spending electricity at night time to heat or cool the room, and it seemed ridiculous. It's a small detail, but I suppose if I wanted to move, I could take the fish room with me now that I've built it in a shipping container. I've planned the electrics a lot better, as you'll see in the slides further down. And also, one of the frustrations with the previous room was that I had all sorts of timers all over the room, and they all went out of sync with each other all the time, every time there was a power out. So I thought I'll just do one lighting circuit, and I can control that in the switchboard, and everyone will be tickety-boo. I wanted a door that was going to work properly, 2 tiers of aquariums instead of 3. The old room had waste plumbing inside the room, so I carried that through, same principle in the new one. Catching the water for the garden seems like a good idea, so we've done that. And of course, we need a freshwater tap inside the room, which the old one had. But I also thought if I planned the room to include space for my frogs, my green tree python and my tarantulas, then it would be an efficient use of space. So first job, I looked around. Shipping containers seem to be very expensive if they're the insulated ones, but I found a pretty ratty looking 20-footer. Had it delivered by a tilt tray and bought a paint gun. That's a good investment if you paint large surfaces. A spray gun. All the other things in my paddock are pale eucalypt, so that was seemed like the right colour to go with to make things look a bit blended in. But while I was thinking about it, I thought there's a few things that I would have to bear in mind. One was that if it is a really well sealed and well insulated space, then because there's living animals in it, I would have to have a net input of air, and that air would have to escape from somewhere. So I had decided that I'd put the air pump inside the shed next door, and the waste plumbing, which you'll see further down before the P-trap, to stop animals crawling into the room, there's a vent, a screened vent, and that's where the net air releases from the room. I thought at first I'd use steel racking that I could perhaps source from Bunnings, but it just didn't seem to be the right shape or length, and it was also pretty expensive. So I decided I'd go with wood. And the other thing was I'd been in various fish rooms over the years, and some of them are so humid that everything seems to drip all the time. And whilst it's a lovely tropical North Queensland feel, it does make me a bit jumpy when it comes to electricity. So these were considerations. The other thing was, if I had an internal fan, then the whole room would be the same temperature inside, or I could leave a fan out and have stratification of the temperature inside, which is what I've chosen at the moment. And I'm still playing around with the heating of the room. So at the moment, all the tanks have got heaters, but the heaters aren't doing much work, and I'll perhaps adjust that in time. So I set to designing the racking on SketchUp, which I use a lot for designing aquarium racking in aquariums. I wanted to keep it pretty simple, so I used checkouts instead of doubling the timbers, which proved to be a very time-consuming process. And I chose to do it in 90/45 high. And the first job, of course, was while the container was sitting next to the other one, having just been painted, we had to dig 4 footings and down to something hard, and then pour concrete in the footings, set it all up, make sure it was level, and then I had to get a Franner crane in to bring it onto the footings. So there's my beloved cement mixer. Best thing I ever bought. Well, best $550 I ever spent on a cement mixer. Here it is sitting on its footings. And then we thought it's probably a good idea to make sure that the footings are good. So we put 2 IBCs in, and there's a pond in the middle here. We were able to fill all three things to about 3,000 kilos, 3 tons, to pressure test the footings. And then we had to try and remove the front doors, which were tremendously heavy. I thought about leaving them on because they, of course, are insulated, but just opening up those doors and closing them all the time would have been it would have driven me crazy. So we cut the hinges and removed them. Brutally heavy doors. At the back of the container, obviously there was the machinery that used to be the compressor and the fan and so on. That had been removed before I bought it, but there was weird sort of fiberglass shapes that held everything in place, and they were still there. So we pulled away a false wall to reveal them and discovered a bit of a horror scene. As you can see in these photos here, that's of course one of many rat nests. But we decided, instead of trying to dick around with removing all this area of foam and filling these here, and then there's these funny little circular holes at the top and the bottom, we would just install cool room paneling in front of it and expander foam them into place, which actually gives quite it's shortened the container by 100 mil, but no biggie, it was fine. So we were able to set that up and expand foam them into place. Then we did the same thing for the front of the room. If you remember when you saw the front doors, they've got this funny radius at the top, so we had to cut those in the panels and fit them as so. And then when I ordered the paneling from the cool room shop, I ordered one of these beautiful cool room door assemblies, because every time I'd been into my previous fish room over 15 years, I thought I've got to fix that bloody door. So this time I wanted to get it right. So it came in a frame, all beautifully made, which was easy to fit. And this is just the side-by-side on the right is obviously how it was before we pulled the doors off and started the internal works. And then on the left, I haven't painted the front yet to match, but I'm just enjoying the nice white door. That detail in the middle where my cursor is, that's a bell. So if the release mechanism for this door doesn't work inside, you can ring this bell and hopefully the neighbours will come over and release you.
Hey, Greg, before you move on, can you just go back to that previous picture?
Yep.
How did you fill in the gaps? Like it looks like there's some sort of sealant around it. Oh, okay. So just that 2-part or that single spray out of a can type stuff.
Yes, we used a lot of it. It's not only does it fill gaps, but it also seems to be really sticky. So it really held it in place beautifully.
Okay.
Of course, we needed to paint the inside. So we prepared all the surfaces and then we used this fantastic spray gun on the inside. I have to admit, I did make a terrible mistake with painting the inside of the room. It was in the middle of, well, in the beginning of winter. It was in a very cold patch, very, very cold patch. And the guy I bought the paint off at the paint shop said, I hope you're not painting this weekend. And I said, oh, I think I'll give it a go. And he said, oh, I'd wait. And I thought, nah, no problem. So I put a heater in the room after we painted it and warmed the room to about 35 degrees. But I made the mistake of shutting the door. So the next day when I came in, a lot of the paint had run all the way down the walls and had pooled along the sides. So we had to redo that. Of course, the humidity had nowhere to go. So the way paint dries is it releases humidity. So anyway, lesson learned, no biggie. Building the racking, that was pretty straightforward. I decided on 90 by 45 structural pine with the checkouts as I talked about, which took a long time. It's all glued and screwed together using stainless steel screws. And I've protected the racking with black acrylic paint, just, you know, for elevated moisture levels and so I had to construct them inside the room because they're 5.5 meters long, and I did most of the racking myself, and I wouldn't have been able to carry them in on my own. On the right, you can see the racking in the process of being painted, front, back, top, bottom, everywhere. Now, I mentioned power earlier, that one of my frustrations had been that there was power points in terrible short supply. So most of the GPOs that I had in the old room had double adapters or power boards coming out of them. It looked a little bit like an Indian street. And it was probably unsafe and certainly very annoying, especially if I had to install, temporarily set up a generator if we had a scheduled power out, because it was just like a spaghetti tree, did my head in. So I made sure there's lots and lots of power points, and that was planned right from the start in the racking before the tops went on the racks. So you can see in these photos that each aquarium each pair of aquariums, as in a top one and a bottom one, has 2 power points each, and then 1 switched power point each. So the ones on the power, the double GPO on the right is a switch circuit, which is for lighting, and the 4 on the left is just continuous power. We install all those before we put the tops on, and then the ballasts for the LED lighting, they are all screwed neatly out of sight underneath there as well. The front of the container, this top left photo is me or Seth, my son, drilling for the waste plumbing. This top right is a detail of the air circuit that's in the roof, in the ceiling, clipped to the ceiling. Bottom right, you can sort of see that loop that goes right around the room. And then this lower left photo is power in and air in. I wanted safety, so we had to install a residual current circuit breaker. This is the dedicated little mini switchboard inside the room. I wanted it to be very safe because high humidity, potential spills and so on. I didn't want to take any risks. So that was a bit of a pill, but it's all safely done and works a treat. And at that stage, we were ready to start transferring the tanks, which 11 months after I bought the container was an extremely exciting day, I have to say. On the left is the old fish room, top tier, middle tier, lower tier. This is the new setup, just 2 levels, as I mentioned, much better. I don't know why I took this photo because it's a dreadful look, but this is with all the tanks removed, and I've now got to pull that racking out and extend my workshop into this area. But that was a great relief to see those empty. And the new tanks installed. This is looking towards the back of the room. Frogs here. The green python will be here. Various tanks. And then looking back the other way, you can see the safety release on the door here because the door seals beautifully. The bell that I hope I'll never have to ring. That'll really freak me out. And you're welcome to ask questions.
We can arrange for you to test the bell.
So a couple of things I didn't, I now know, having done the build. An insulated shipping container is obviously a standard size on the outside, but on the inside, because it's insulated, it's actually got much less room. A normal shipping container is nearly 2,400 inside, nearly. But this, of course, has got thick insulation in the floor and thick insulation in the ceiling. So it's a reduced space. That was a deciding factor. Well, that was a factor that hammered home that I only could have 2 levels of aquariums, which suited me anyway. Of course, it's filled up already. So maybe I should have bought a 40-footer, but I didn't. And interestingly, I couldn't have predicted this, but Chris Lemon gave me a hint that there would be stratification inside the room in terms of the temperature. And I measured it the other day, and there is just over 2 degrees difference in about 700 height. I haven't measured the absolute temperature at the floor, but it'll be a bit less. And in the ceiling, well, it might be a little bit more, but that's sort of irrelevant.
Did you use the solar reflective paint?
Solar reflector paint? Did you say?
Yeah, a special paint for the outside.
No, it's just pale eucalypt green, which does get quite hot in summer, but I'm hoping that the insulation's effective enough for that not to be an issue.
When we set up a teleport in Kuala Lumpur, we used something that was a specialised paint for it's white for reflecting solar, and it actually worked quite well.
Okay, all right. Well, I could always paint the roof of it in time if it creates an issue. All the way along the build, I was wondering whether it would have been easier, less work and cheaper to buy a non-insulated shipping container and just buy a cool room and slide it in. Still not sure, jury's out on that one, but I mean, I've done
Well,
it.
how much is a standard shipping container?
Well,
Is it
it
$2,000
depends
or
on the
$3,000?
condition, the days that they've done on the water, but you can buy one for a 20-footer for like $1,200 or something. I mean, it's a lot less.
Greg, I hate to tell you, an insulated shipping container would have been cheaper.
Really?
It is an insulated shipping container.
No, yeah, but did it come with a refrigeration unit as well?
No, the refrigeration unit had been removed.
Oh, okay, no worries. Got it.
Oh, you mean like an operating one?
No. I meant a refrigerated container with a non-operational unit installed.
Look, I looked around. The going rate for one in good condition was about $5,000. I got mine for $3,500 and $500 delivery, which I thought was a bargain. The cool room panels for 100 mil thick are pretty dear.
Yeah.
And I only did the front and the back, although it included a door, and I think the door was about $900 of the 2.5. So quite a lot. That's a sort of a breakdown of some of the costs, because I know you'll all be wondering. Pardon me.
We were, thank you.
Yeah, I'll just let you read through it. There's a few hidden costs that I probably would have thought about if I'd thought it through. Like, for example, even if you pre-do the footings and have the container delivered, it's delivered on a tilt tray. So it's then got to be craned into place. A tilt tray can't put it on the footings. So the delivery of the container to the site was $500, and then the franner, I think the crane was, I think, $650. And of course, as I've said, there's lots of incidentals. You never allow for your labour, of course, because it's a labour of love. But the result is fabulous. And I'm really pleased that I went through it. Couple of just things to mention at the end. Yep.
Greg, if I can ask, for your council, what restrictions did your council have to install or otherwise construct or otherwise develop a container which would have been considered by Hume Council, for instance, as a shed?
That's a very good question, Rod. Somebody did ask me that, and I paled visibly when they did. What's the saying? It's better to ask forgiveness than permission.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm sort of gone by that.
Yeah, that's why I'm bringing it up, because probably for the size of your block and all that sort of thing, and that you already had a container there, you'd be able to, and pardon the expression, but you'd be able to get away with it. However, for other people considering it, particularly if they do not have a large property and already have a container there or something like that, they'd really have to have a look at council restrictions, because anything bigger than what is it? I think it's 10 square meters or something. Anything bigger than 10 square meters, you require, or the Hume Council actually, you require planning permission and a design plans and all that. And it keeps on going that you have to have all these sort of things done. And then on top of that, you have to have the roof connected to stormwater. So you got all these different things that you'd have to do. And for instance, again, with the Hume Council, just as an example, they actually do every 5 years these days, they do a overhead scan of properties and see where there's been changes, and actually approach people, residents and that sort of stuff, if there have been changes, to require seeing the planning permission and the authorisations. So I don't want to be a stick in the mud on that, but that is something that,
thanks, mate,
that you have to check beforehand what you can and can't do.
Yep, no, that's
why
a very
I mentioned it very quickly. Why I mentioned it is because I built a greenhouse just recently at the back of my place, and I had to go through all those hoops in order to finally get it built. And even then, I'm still waiting for stormwater to be connected. And it's an absolute pain in the bum. It does help if you know what the requirements are, but it is quite a planning process, and to get through the planning first for the approvals, then for the construction, then for the after construction sign off. And the construction can be just a container.
What you might have to do, Rod, is paint it mist green. Obviously that's what fools the security cameras, the council cameras.
Rod, thanks for that.
LOL, but it doesn't for that, because I also know that there's a couple of people in Broadmeadows that sort of did those sort of things and camouflage and all that sort of stuff, and they got caught out. And the bottom line there is you've got to remove it. It's not a case of you've got to adjust it or anything like that. You've got to remove it, and then you can apply to try and do it again.
Thanks, Rod. Yes.
And we have cyclo ratings in Northern Australia too.
Yeah, exactly. All those things taken into account with that. What you could do even 10 years ago, you can't do now.
Thanks for that. I won't get much sleep tonight, Rod, but thanks. That's great. My neighbours think that it's a drug lab. But
Hi, Greg. Could I ask you, have you measured what the humidity levels are inside?
I have not measured the humidity. No.
And as you know, I've had problems with that with my under the house fish room. And I noticed particularly because you're heating the individual tanks, and I'd understood that caused greater humidity problems than heating the room. So I was just interested in
all my tanks
thoughts.
Have comprehensive cover glass, Neville.
Yeah, well, as you know, we're working on that bit.
So could I just comment on the humidity, because about the same time Greg was doing this, I'd put in a 3 metre by 3 metre cool room within an existing shed, and we had shocking humidity. But as soon as we covered put all the lids on the tanks, there's nothing in there at all now.
Okay, that's good to hear, because I've bulked it, completely ripping out my fish room, and it's not been active for quite a while, and I'm starting to get tanks going again. And I've got a humidity meter in there at the moment, but at the moment I've not got cover glasses for everything. But at the moment I'm heating the individual tanks because I've not got many going, but I'm intending to go back to heating the room.
Yeah, no, we've got individual tanks and air coming from outside. But yeah, it was literally you'd go in there and have a shower with all the condensation on the ceiling until we got the lids on the tanks, and then yeah, it just disappeared. It was great.
The only place where I've got condensation is when you open the door jam.
Yep.
Where there's water that drips down, but the ceiling inside the room is bone dry, and as is the floor on the walls at this stage. So I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
If you ever have any questions, let me know in North Queensland, because like I said, we set up a teleport. Basically, it's full of electronic equipment for broadcast television.
Can you teleport to Vic?
We had a lot of the same problems.
Right. Yeah. In North
Something
Queensland, you would.
So in electronics, ventilation actually is your friend. And one of the things with a fish room is, particularly if you're actually heating the individual tanks, the amount of heat transfer that goes out from your tanks into the air to then say ventilate. So say if you're ejecting that air to the outside, and of course you're replacing it with fresh air, the amount of heat that actually is transferred is relatively inconsequential if you can limit the amount of air that goes outside. But if you can actually import drier air and eject moister air, then you'll find that you'll control the humidity for a relatively small cost of heat. So maybe a degree or two. So if you can wear the degree or two of heat loss, you're actually going to offset your humidity problem. Alternatively, you could just cover your tanks.
Yeah. If there's no other questions, I think we should take a break for 7 minutes and reconvene at 1:30.
Okay.
Just leave your computers running and your screens on or whatever, and then if Michael's still there, which he is, then we'll launch into Michael in about 8:30, if that's all right. Yeah.
Greg, thanks for that presentation. It was excellent. Learned a lot, mate. Really enjoyed it. Well done.
My pleasure. Good. All right, we'll see you at 1:30.
Actually, Greg, it's I just may as well turn my. I know I've done measurements in my my current fish room, which is under the house. Of course, it's a standard bay, which, as it turns out, and it's a standard width, which amazingly enough is about 7 feet by 40 feet, and it's about 9 feet high. Guess what? That's very similar to.
Wow, 40-footer, good for you. Wow.
But I'm not going to do that because I've actually looked at craning it in, and I've actually got to knock down a great big tree out in the backyard here. So yeah, I don't really want to get an arborist in to knock that down.
Very good. Very good.
And speaking of that, that's why I've been really paranoid about, because I'm a bit like Neville. I've got my fish room under my house, and being in Queensland, it's naturally humid all the time, except now. So I've always been watching to see what would happen if you'd get spores or, fungal growths starting to appear on the wooden joists, which are, in my Queensland house. But no, there's actually absolutely nothing. But I don't religiously seal anything. I've just got some blankets literally on the walls, and I've mostly duct taped up some obvious great big gaps. But the small gaps I just don't sweat, and I don't really over insulate anything. Mind you, my fish room does get down to 18 degrees, which does sometimes cause a few problems with some of the northerner fish, and I might lose a few over winter, but so be it. But yeah, I've definitely kept the humidity under control, and I definitely don't have any mold or anything like that appearing, which is a bit of a bonus.
Good.
Yeah, the problem I had was actually, so I've got it's a garage underneath our lounge room, and the walls are cool room, second-hand cool room panel, and the front, 4 walls. But then the roof, I put insulation in and put cement board on it.
Yep.
And the condensation problem isn't actually in the room; it's above the insulation in the roof.
Yep.
And it was actually bowing the floorboards in the lounge room. Fortunately, when I closed down I had to close down the room and ventilate it for a while, but there doesn't seem to be any long-term structural damage yet. And the floorboards, after a year of drying out, have now gone back almost flat.
Oh, that's good.
But I don't want to repeat disaster. But on the other hand, I don't really want to pull the whole roof out of the fish room.
It might.
I
It
wish
might
I'd
paint.
just.
Greg,
I
Greg, I
wish
was
I'd just
surprised
sealed
to
it in
hear
the
that
first
you're trying
place.
to heat each tank individually, and I can see now why you've got such massive PowerPoint problems. When I had my fish room, it was actually built inside the house. I purpose built it inside the house with blue board on the inside and fully insulated walls and ceiling. But I chose at that time to heat the whole room, and all I had was a very, very small column oil heater, which I only used to get the room up to temperature, and then I never used again. I didn't have to cool the room in winter or heat the room in winter. I didn't have to cool it in summer. It was just this tiny little oil column heater. And I then needed very few power points because I had a big Sakura Gower air pump that provided air to 60 tanks. And all I needed then was power points for lights.
Leo, that as I hinted at the start of the talk, because all the tanks have only recently gone in there from the other room, when I've got a bit of time, I'm going to play around with taking out half the heaters and seeing if I can keep the same, now that there's more thermal mass, see if I can keep the same average temperature. And then my long-term goal is to perhaps use the switched circuit to only heat during the daytime when my solar array is producing power, and then hope that if there's a dip of 1 or 2 degrees overnight and then it starts again the next day, maybe that's going to be okay. So I've got a lot of tweaking to do with that.
I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah. Yep.
Greg,
Yep.
With the humidity, with the humidity, like you've got a bit of an air
Recognise that
outlet.
word, Rodney.
You've got a bit of an air outlet, is it? So you've got air coming in and air going out, even if it's small.
Yeah.
One thing that can make a hell of a difference to humidity is air movement. I'd suggest, for instance, if you get a pedestal fan and operate it at low all the time, because then you're not getting the temperature differential. The temperature, like you note that you're getting at the top versus the temperature you're getting at the bottom, that differential is one of the big things that's causing humidity, causing the droplet from the humidity. If you've got some air movement, even if it's low, that will change the differentials so you don't get that stratification to that same degree, and that substantially, even with covers and that, great, but that will substantially reduce any build-up of humidity.
Well, the only place where it drips, as I said, is in the door frame. Everywhere else it's bone dry.
Yes.
So far, so good.
But the door frame is an indication that you're getting humidity elsewhere. It can be at the back of your stands, at the back of your aquariums. You won't see them, right? You think everything's all right, but there'll be certain pockets. If you have a bit of air movement, that will substantially reduce any air pockets, any temperature differentials, any water buildup.
Yeah, Greg?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have in my fish room, 6x3 internal garage, I have an oscillating fan. I have absolutely no condensation at all. And I have no, or practically no, layering of heat, because with the oscillating fan pointing upwards at an angle, it drives the warm air down and goes right down under all the tanks. I've got 4 levels of tanks, and they're all within about 1.5 degrees of each other.
Yeah.
So oscillating fan directing the air up and down.
Yes.
Around, no humidity problems at all. Condensation.
Good to know.
Hey, Greg, I'm picking up a bit of feedback. Did you want to just mute yourself for a second? Oh, there it goes. Disappeared. Not sure why we were getting that. All right.
Hey, Greg, can you hear me?
I didn't even hit the button yet.
Is anyone else getting feedback, or is it clear?
Clear.
No, I'm getting feedback.
Yeah, we're getting like a ringing.
Yeah, I'm getting feedback as well, or did get feedback.
Sounds like a printer going off.
Sounds good now. Is Daryl
Yes.
online?
Yep.
Is there noise now?
No, it's all good now.
Really faint.
Clean as a whistle.
Very good.
All right, shall we move on to the next part of the evening?
Indeed.
So basically, for the next little while, we're going to have Michael Hammer speak, and then we'll have another brief break after that. And then we're going to, if folks want to hang around a little bit, I was going to give a quick tour of my fish facilities. Taken some videos earlier on that I was just going to show for a few minutes, just so people can see a little bit of that. All right, so it's a great pleasure to introduce Dr. Michael Hammer. I've actually known Michael about 20 years, almost to the month actually, when we first met in Adelaide and then went up north, up to Dalhousie Springs and on to Darwin collecting fishes back in 2001. You don't find too many people keener and better at catching fish than Michael Hammer. He would always, I remember in those early days, Rochelle and I would go seining and he'd just disappear and then he'd just come back with a bucket of fish that we didn't catch. And so it was really fantastic being out in the field, and he always came back with some sort of treat and delight that you weren't expecting. So I've had many, many years of great fun with Michael. And so we're really lucky that we've got him and able to get him to share a bit of his wisdom about one of his great passions and favorite groups of fishes, gobies. With that, I'll hand across to Michael and he can start sharing his screen and away he can go.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Hope the sound is good. Everyone, thumbs up. Yo. All right. How's that looking? All right, it's great to have everyone here from across the country and a few I saw a bit further afield as well. So welcome. Hopefully we can cheer you up with a few gobies for those that are stuck in lockdown at the moment. Just firstly, I'd like to start with some acknowledgements. Tonight I'm speaking from Larrakia land, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of across Australia and New Guinea and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. The talk I'm doing tonight comes from a couple of papers that were published earlier this year. One was a taxonomic study with Helen Larson, and another was a genetic study with Mark Adams, Peter, Catherine Hassel, and Terry Bertozzi. So I'd like to acknowledge those people. So this is their work as well. And there's also a lot of other people that have helped, just a few of the main ones, Doug Hosey, Gary Moores, who'll get a few mentions, Glenn Briggs, Keith Martin's always helped in the Queensland area, Dave Wilson, people like John Lenigan as well. So thanks to everyone, and you'll see your photos as we go through of different things. So certainly a long-term study and lots, hopefully, right around Australia. All right, so gobies, tiny in size, but they're large by number. And that's everywhere you go, you can find lots of different species. And that's one of the reasons why they're so interesting. That means they're also a significant component of biodiversity and food chains in lots of different areas. And they're getting more and more attention in the aquarium trade, especially with nanotanks, and as we're discovering more different species that are well suited to little homes. They also occur in areas that are prone to human development, so in mangroves and embayments. So they're good environmental indicators. The numbers of species and how they're faring can help to tell us about the health of these areas. But the big trouble in using them for any of those values is that they're easily confused. A lot of species are overlooked, and we don't really know what's going on in a lot of cases. Now, Pseudogobius are a type of estuarine goby. They're very small grey blobs, as a lot of our rainbow fish people would call them, but hopefully after tonight, you'll be sold that they're much more interesting. Until recently, there was only 8 valid species of these across the Indo-Pacific, from China down to southern Tasmania. Helen had been working on these for a long time before I'd met her even. I'd say 30 years, but it's probably longer than that, but on and off. To do these things, you need to look at a lot of little bits of the jigsaw puzzle and bring them all together at the end. I'd been looking at them for probably 20 years as well, and in different ways. And we sort of merged these two studies to come up with a big super product with lots of news to share from around Australia and beyond. So that's the tour tonight. We'll go around different ports in Australia, freshwater and saltwater, and see what we found. The methods, as Dave Wilson, I don't know if he's on tonight, but he coined the term puddle pirate. So we basically, in the little bits of water where you don't often go looking for fish, you don't need to have very big or sophisticated nets, little aquarium nets. We perfected the trademark tsunami swoosh technique, where basically you set the net next to the puddle and you swish all the water out of the puddle into the net. And that is really good at catching cryptic gobies. You do need to get muddy a lot of the time, so, you know, get ready for that. And you do need to be careful of biting animals like mosquitoes and slightly larger ones as well, particularly up around here. That's the distribution of pseudogobius. So you can see pretty widely spread and very common around the Australian coastline. So a great group to study, lots of potential for species discovery. This is my introduction to pseudogobius. This would be one we collected from the South Power River in about 1999 or 97. I kept it in a fish tank and bred them in the fish tank and learned all about them. So it's a bit of an old photo, but it's important to me as how I sort of my connection back to the group. It then became scientifically interesting. We were doing, so through my PhD work and work with Peter and others, comparing the genetic structure of all sorts of fish across southeastern Australia and southern Australia. And so then we set off to include the blue spot goby in that work. But it then grew and grew, particularly as I moved to the tropics. Brag photo for Glenn, that we found a whole heap of new species. So while it was exciting being out catching the barra in the big rivers, my interest was really jumping out of the boat, getting into these little puddles in the mangroves, using the high-tech gear and coming up with a bag of all sorts of cool estuarine fish. That's a blueback blue eye, but the little grey blobs in the background are our target. As soon as we started looking at these grey blobs, some of them had all these amazing colours. And it's like, well, that's not supposed to be there. That's pretty much a brand moment of discovery when we found this fish with bright yellow bands in the dorsal fins, and it didn't match to anything else that Helen or anyone had been looking at. So straight away, we managed to bring that into the study and go from there. So prior to our work, there was basically considered to be one species of pseudogobius or snub-nosed goby in Northern Australia. And the combined field work and genetics found that there's at least 7. And then we reviewed the Southern Australian blue spot goby as well. So again, this is a bit of a, it's hard to see the details probably, but a map, all the different shapes and colours represent different species. So I'll go through a bit more, all these different species during the talk, but basically you can see we've sampled a lot of Australian coastline, looking for gobies, and also into New Guinea and beyond as well. I know Helen's done a lot of work in Singapore and Brunei and places like that, which is really important to tie the study together. So let's start over in the west, in Perth, probably the most oldest record of pseudogobius we have. The Swan River didn't look like this back in 1877 when the type specimen of the blue spot goby olorum was collected, still in very good condition. And then we went and collected pretty much the same size animal again. So that's comparing the old specimen and the new specimen that we used in our study. So it stayed the same name, which is about the only one that did, but we managed to redescribe it as well, get all new data to look at it that way. That's the male with the obvious blue spot. The females do have a greeny blue spot, but more of a darker color. This one's a gravid female. Again, all of these are great aquarium subjects. They settle in very quickly. So you can keep them in cold water tanks and then others in tropical tanks. They eat frozen food and then pellet food really, really readily. So they're a great aquarium fish overall. This one's just saying, wake up. This one had a hanging leech hanging off it. And I actually just got this leech identified the other day by our curator at the annelids up here. So there's a whole group of different estuarine leeches, and they seem to really love the estuarine gobies we get around the place, including pseudogobius. Just so for each region, just I'll show you some collecting photos. These are the guys at Murdoch Uni that was helping collect some samples over there in one of the tributaries of the Swan. You can see a whole range of hardyheads and gobies. One of my favourite ones from over there, that's the Favonigobius, the spotted goby. A Tamar goby relative that lives on the west coast. Ever popular bridal gobies, they're great in a tank if you can look after the salinity a bit. These are typical sorts of habitats. You get them not just in estuaries, but they do go a fair way inland, particularly in areas that have had secondary salinisation or naturally salty. So these sort of summer refuge pools, co-occurring with some other things like pygmy perches. That's the Bolston's pygmy perch. That was the western pygmy perch, or one of the western pygmy perch. That's the Galaxids that lives down there, Occidentalis. All right, so let's move across into the Gulf. This is some spectacular country over, not much fresh water, but a lot of nice marine embayments and lots of good gobies over there. Sort of on the west coast of South Australia, places like Coffin Bay, Tumby Bay, all the way through to Port Lincoln. Coffin Bay is a great fish hunting spot and general area to rest. Lots of seagrass, so again, good goby habitat. These are other typical habitats in that area. You do get little mangrove tidal creeks and big Posidonia or seagrass mudflats, which are, again, great places to go with your little aquarium nets at low tide. It's me covered in flies looking at gobies. And that's a whopping blue spot goby. That would be, I think I measured it the other day, about nearly 9 centimetres. So it's probably a world record for those guys. The West Coast ones do get a lot larger than the East Coast species. Some of the other common fish you get with them are the little sand gobies. This is a group we're working on with Doug at the moment. It's one of the 2 southern endemic cold water goby groups. This is Nessagobius, the sicklefin goby. Very subtle but quite interesting colours. And that's Pelchellus, one of the described ones of those. Loves seagrass. And some of the other weird and wonderful things. This is a sculptured goby. You can see why when you zoom in on its head. It's got all these big rays of elevated ridges that give it some real character. And some all sorts of other fish that you catch. We call this bycatch. Things like hardyheads, weedfish, clingfish, King George whiting juveniles, whitefish, pygmy cuttlefish. So these are really rich environments that support biodiversity, commercial fisheries, and general aquatic health. All right, so less pristine now, we might go up to the upper Gulf, so upper St. Vincent and Spencer Gulf in South Australia. There's a lot of industry and ports in this area, and there's a matching level of health to the fauna. So we have a lot of introduced animals that have come from Eastern Australia or overseas. These are the sorts of habitats we sampled around here. I think there's at Port Pirie, Port Augusta. And actually one of my favourite methods is just at the low tides, turning over the rocks and finding little gobies in the puddles underneath. You often get some really cryptic species that you won't catch in other methods just by using your hands. Be careful of the oysters, but it's a really great technique. So here's a half-bridle goby that's the first record from South Australia, otherwise known from the East Coast, so it would probably come in ship's ballast water. That's the male. Same with the crest frill goby. You can see all the little frilly fins it has. That's again an East Coast thing, normally. All right, here's Port Adelaide Power Station. This is the hotspot for introduced fish. It's got hot water that comes out, so you get a lot of subtropical gobies in a warmer climate, a colder climate. So a lot of things from Sydney and Brisbane have turned up in here. Explore it with canoes. It's a great way. Great goby habitat. They don't care what it is, as long as it's structure. So here's another one here, a little chocolate coloured Mugillagobius, again from Eastern Australia, co-occurring with Pseudogobius. These are the sort of things you find when you lift up the rocks. Really spectacular coloured crested oyster goby. Again, another Eastern Australian critter.
Hey, Michael, what's the asterisk mean after the name?
Yeah, I've just put that for the things that are introduced to the area. So translocated Australian native species. You'll see a couple in a minute that are exotic species to Australia. They have the little triangle. So good point. You can see his little crest on this guy, how you can pick him out. They're amazing in a fish tank, these guys, a real character. Like they're pretty cryptic, but when they come out, yeah, they're really aggressive and happy. Another place in Adelaide, right in the middle of town, this is West Lakes. You know, very altered, but full of gobies. Sort of scrape the sides of the cement as you go along, and you get all sorts of sort of infouling flora, but full of gobies. This is a little largemouth goby. Again, the only known place in South Australia where it occurs. So again, likely have come in ship ballast. Now this one's from overseas. This is the trident goby from Japan. It's widespread in other ports in Australia as well, including I think Perth, Sydney and Melbourne so far. Maybe in New Zealand too. All right, so let's get out of the Gulfs into Kangaroo Island. So this is a really nice coastal island, pretty pristine. Bit of secondary salinisation, which the gobies do like, but this is how you get there from the mainland. And yeah, really great seagrass habitats over there. Pelican Lagoon, it's now a nature reserve, but it's a hotspot for all sorts of animals. Really, really good diversity of habitats and species. And this is Terry. This one is Terry, and this is Ruin. These guys were helping me, or we're all working together on our big survey of intertidal gobies across South Australia. And there's a bit of a moment of discovery too. We lifted up the net and found a couple of species that might look similar to the naked eye, but once you look into them, this one is the common sand goby, and this is a really unusual, what we call a Nessagobius, so the endemic group. Turns out that was a brand new species, had just been overlooked all this time. Quite spectacular. Only certain times of the year that they're big, so I think they're an annual species, so you've got to go at the right time in the right place. And so far, it's only been found in northeast Kangaroo Island. So that was a bit of a spin-off of our Pseudogobius and general goby work. So it's pretty exciting. And my other favourite fish from that area is one of the Tasman gobies. So there's 3 species of these in Australia. There's a freshish one, an estuarine one, and a marine one. This is the Glover's marine Tasman goby. Really a character fish. Be great in fish tanks if you get enough of them and get them going. Really cool green eye. You can see the tiger sand gobies in the background there. Okay, on the south coast of KI, there's a lot of nice freshwater estuaries, so constant flow of fresh water. This is where you get good gobies as well, little saline creeks. So you can see the salinity at the top there. It's about 10% of marine seawater, so pretty salty, but fine for gobies. And we get quite a few of them in there. So these are still the western species, the Olarum, the Swan River goby. As you go further east, you start to get into the eastern goby, which I'll introduce you to in a minute. And they co-occur with galaxids and things like brim, bridal gobies, all those typical estuarine fish that sometimes stretch into fresh water. All right, let's go to Melbourne. Nearly got to Melbourne a couple of weeks ago, but had to turn around. So yeah, quite a lot of different habitats down there, but I guess just focus on Port Phillip Bay. Just in real common areas, you can find all sorts of cool gobies. This is not a cool goby. This is the yellowfin goby from overseas. But just around the corner, this is one of the ANGFA field trips. Who can remember the year? But the Melbourne Convention, after the convention, went down to one of the Cherry Lake, I think it is. Go Greg, looking for gobies, did really well. Got a whole heap of these little guys. So this is the what's now known as the Eastern Blue Spot Goby, or EOS, which means something to do with rising in the east in terms of the sun, but in terms of Latin. But it's previously been known as Split 9, and pretty much the same distribution as previously known, except there's a bit of a hybrid zone between EOS and Swan River Goby in Western Victoria around the Glenelg River area. But it's pretty small area, and this species is a bit more narrow, doesn't grow as large, a bit more slender, and there's quite a few morphological characters under the microscope to tell them apart as well. Still have that nice bright blue spot in the first dorsal fin, particularly males, but also I've seen it in the females. Great fish tank pet as well, very tolerant of all sorts of salinities, water chemistry. You do need a bit of water hardness with Melbourne tap water, but other than that, they're pretty good. Tasmania, lots of this down in Hobart, lots of great goby habitat everywhere you go. Continue our tour. On the north coast, again, pack a dip net wherever I went on holidays. This is the Tasman goby's last dive, one of the lagoon goby, which is really common in coastal lakes and estuaries throughout southeastern Australia. It's pretty much from Kangaroo Island down to Gippsland and then all around Tasmania. Great little fish. They build burrows in the sand, so if you can get some nice firm sand in the fish tank, it's really good to watch. Big buff-headed Tamar goby. Another Nisogobius. This one's from a bit more marine, but they do venture into the lower estuaries. This is one of the first ones described, Hinsby. And other things you run into, that's Tasmanian whitebait. Pretty cool critters. Random frogs as well. All right, let's go to Sydney. Not sure we do this other than virtually, but it's pretty cool again for gobies. Lots of different habitats. You've got all the semi-subtemperate habitats. Lots of drains that say don't go in, but I'm sure most people do go in if you are chasing gobies. Lots of nice mangrove habitats as well. So along with pseudogobies, you tend to find these guys. This is the oyster goby where it's native to. Spectacular animals. Underbelly of one, big male. Largemouth goby again. Different Mugilla gobies. This is the one that's only found in sort of southeastern Australia, or most of the other Mugilla gobies sort of go a bit further, but this one goes up to about Brisbane and that's it, from Sydney to Brisbane. Little pocket in Victoria as well. One of our smaller gobies, the little pandacas. Helen's pretty going crazy over these at the moment. Tiny little things. That's literally a big one, and that's my fingernail. So, you know, tiny little things. And it looks like there's a whole raft of species of those, and trying to tell them apart. Need a pretty good microscope. But again, it's you can learn a lot. They're great in a small fish tank. They love just feeding on brine shrimps, and you can get them going really well in smaller tanks. Got to Brisbane. Cruising along now. Starting to hit the hotspot of goby diversity as we get into the tropics. Doesn't have to be really amazing habitat. This is just a salt marsh down at Manly. One of my favourite collecting spots in that area. Little drains are great. I can't remember where that is, somewhere in Coorparoo, I think. Little drain full of gobies. So we start to get into the tropical species now. So this is a new species known as the northern snub-nosed goby, or Aquilonius of the north. It's distributed from Brisbane north all the way around to pretty much Shark Bay, nearly in the west. So hasn't seemed to snuck over to New Guinea, just stayed on the Australian mainland. Its most obvious features is its lack of features. It doesn't have any real major colours. There's no spots in the tail. Just a really no stripes or anything in the caudal fin. So a very plain fellow, but very tolerant. It occurs in a wide range of water chemistries and habitats. So really makes up for it. Probably good predator avoidance being that plain. That's a male from the region. Very plain colours, even when it's at its best. Female, similar. You can see they don't really have any dots, which is important when I start to show some of the other species. The the patterns of dots and spots on the tail, on the peduncle here and on the tail are really important to tell others apart. Gobiopteris, another one of those problematic groups, little see-through fish. You can actually, when you feed them in a fish tank, you can watch the food go into the stomach. You can watch their heartbeat. You can see the eggs through the sidewall. They're really amazing critters as well. Again, don't need a very big tank, and they don't do great in big tanks, but feed them sort of live foods and floating pellets in a smaller tank, and they're great little nano tank fish. And they're pretty common. You get big schools of them when you do find them. So they're a great schooling fish in a fish tank. I'm sure there's lots of different species once we start looking at these too. But if Hogan and Dave was here, we could do a joke about this one, how it smelt, but it's doing all right. These are starting here. Wilson's Goby starts from around Brisbane all the way around to Broome into New Guinea as well. All right, let's go to Cairns now. Typical Cairns habitat when you get some good rains. So we are very croc safe here, don't worry. But yeah, great playing in the mud. In the drains, tidal creeks. And we've come across this little critter. So compared to the last species, you can see now there's a pair of dots in the tail and there's some rows of spots in the tail. And this is a real famous one. It's Jeff's snub-nosed goby, named after Helen's long-suffering partner, Jeff Larson. A really spectacular endemic species to sort of central northeast Queensland there. So really aptly named to a cool fish. You can see that they do get a bit of colour. This is one from Cairns drain, the female, bit of mark on the body, a bit of orange in the fins. And that's a photo of the pair of the male up the top, a bit more colourful. Gets a bit of banding in the fins, spots on the tail as well. And here's those little Mickey Mouse dot spots in the caudal peduncle. So once you start looking hard, they're the sort of features you need to see all the different species. Moving a little bit, this is Palm Cove, a little fast flowing freshwater creek. Occasionally the tide pushes up into here. This has got really interesting story. We were down in Melbourne, might have been during a convention, and I popped over to Gary's house, saying g'day to Gary. And I looked in one of his tanks and I go, oh, that's a weird pseudogobius. I've never seen anything like it. And there was no, when I sort of looked into it, there was nothing recorded like that in Australia before. He goes, oh, that's just a little brown grey blob that I caught up in Cairns. So he kindly lent me the fish, or provided me the fish, and we got it back up to Darwin and studied it. And sure enough, it turned out to be this guy, a tropical, otherwise known from sort of Indonesia through to Japan, but the first record from Australia of the black-spotted snub-nosed gobies. It seems to like areas with higher rainfall, so where you get good flowing water into estuaries. So that was a new Australian record. There is genetic differences between Australia, New Guinea and the rest of the world, so we might have another new species once we delve into it. So otherwise known as the Fishroom goby, hiding in Melbourne, waiting to be discovered. Just a couple more photos. They're really obvious because they have the black stripe from the eye. They lack a stripe on the body. Really colourful dorsal fin. Again, the males can get a bit of blue, females in the background there. And they've got lots of rows of spots in the tail. And you can't quite make it out there, but there's Mickey Mouse spots in the tail as well. And I was just saying hello. But you can see those great black stripes down the eyes there. Some of the other fish that you get in the same sorts of habitats. This is the Mertens goby. They turn bright yellow when they're breeding. An undescribed goby from the same area, marbled goby. A really weird looking one, Dotsugobius. And some of the glossogobies, there's a great variety of those up there, but this one's got little whiskers. And one for Gary. I couldn't get your grunter in, Gary, but I did put a snakehead in for you. Great big gudgeon. It's actually got a new name now. We have to update. It's been redescribed, the one in Australia. All right, further north again, let's go have a check out Weeper. There's John playing around in the mud. I'm not sure he's even looking at fish, but it's a good photo of the sorts of habitats to look for gobies. And these little tiny tidal creeks, that's Trunding Creek, just right in the middle of Weeper. We found another new species. This is called Hosies, or it's banded snubtail goby, but it's named after Doug Hosey, who's done a mountain of work on gobies in Australia and across the world. So it's a really fitting honour. It occurs from Cape York into southern and northern New Guinea, and then through the Gulf of Carpentaria as well. So it's an endemic species around northeastern Australia. Once you can see them on the white background, can you see why the name? It's got these, the male in particular has these big black bands of spots in the tail. And they're very colourful. That'd be a great fish tank, one of these guys. And they occur, these ones tend to occur more in fresh water than in estuarine conditions. So again, it'd be a really great aquarium fish. Other critters you find with them, some of the retigobius. Had to put a rainbow fish in so that people would stop complaining, but there are some nice rainbow fish around Weipa. Don't get distracted by these things. Threadfins. Pretty spectacular Pacific. Blue eyes not in the Pacific on that side of the Cape. All right, now hometown, Darwin. Lots of different places to find gobies here. So these are, Darwin has 7 metre tides, particularly in spring. So you get all the reefs get exposed, little tide pools in those sort of areas. Tidal estuarine areas, this is the Blackmore River. Another one of those, found some fish in someone's aquarium down south, recognised that it didn't look like the other ones, and then we followed it up and it recorded an additional new species. On the Darwin Convention way back when, checking for fish in the, just near the casino there, catching all sorts of gobies. And there's endless numbers of these small little tidal creeks around Darwin to look in. This is the island mangrove goby, Platystomus, that occurs in Australia, but a bit wider as well. If you're lucky enough, you can catch these critters, the weird amblyopines, the blind gobies. This one, they don't really do have eyes, but they're tiny, but they make up with all these other sensory features all over the head. This is a male and female of probably an undescribed worm goby from just at Mindle Beach, where everyone goes to watch the sunset. We went to catch gobies. The Butis, everyone will be should be familiar with the crazy fish, but it's actually, that's the way you should look at them. They always swimming upside down, or that might be right way up to them. They're amazing fish in a fish tank. They're just always doing weird things. Odonteliotrus, the big sinuous gudgeon, they're great. Again, full of character. They do get pretty big and they're good jumpers, but great little pets as well. All right, so these are the snub-nosed gobies we get around Darwin. This is that, basically the banded goby, snub-nosed goby. You can see the yellow, nice yellow markings in the fins. That was the one we found earlier from Manangreta, the first moment of discovery. So it's named as Cinctus, which means banded. This is a great little one. This is the yellowfin snub-nosed goby. It's described from Malaysia. So this is a new Australian record. Occurs in Darwin and in Weipa, and probably a few other places in between. But there's really the deep genetic lineages between Australia and Southeast Asia. So we need to do some more work on that and get some more samples, but the Australian one might turn out to be a new species too. You can see the way to tell this species apart on the tail here, it's got this bright yellow half moon. This is a female one, you can see, and the males do get a little bit of blue spot. They have the black stripe on the face and on the body, but then lack any markings in the tail. So just to give you an idea of all the different characters you can use to tell the other different ones apart. And they're great. And again, a nano tank. This is a whole little school of them chewing away on an algae wafer, really coloured up. You can see some of the males in amongst them, a bit more colourful again. But literally those things are only 2 centimetres. So yeah, love a little sandy aquarium. Probably save the best for last. This is one that is being described as Rhizophora, which means loosely related to the mangroves that it lives in. Loves little mangrove puddles, little tiny creeks and crab holes in amongst the mangroves. The males have this spectacular racing stripe down the side. You can see they have a really big blue, big spot on the tail as well. So that's diagnostic for the species. But again, a miniature species, 2 to 3 centimetres, but really spectacular. That's the female. So it still has the black spot on the tail there. Slight racing stripe. And that's a displaying male. So yeah, they like a little bit of salt. I think you'd probably have to keep the water hard to keep them long term, but they do cope with fresh water as well. Basically all habitats in Darwin turn fresh for several months of the year during good wet seasons. So the fish up here are really well suited to aquariums, just living naturally in variable environments. All right, so that's a bit of the end of our tour. Overall, the study, we described 7 new species of goby, so some in Australia, then another one overseas as well. Sunk and resurrected some other names. Now there's 15 species in the genus, 9 of them in Australia, and at least 7 of those are endemic to Australia. And there's at least 1 more species to come. Just as we finished the study, packing up all the material, got some gobies from another group, and in that, mixed in with that jar, was a tiny little goby, which I'll show you in a minute. So now we need to go catch some of them to name another one, just when you thought it was done. Your job is never done with these groups. That was published in one of the, this is a bit of an abstract of the study, just showing all the different species. So it's good to see them all together. You can start to see the features, where the spots are, bands and patterns. And it's just a good way to look at them. All right, so in summary as well, snub-nosed gobies occur in all states and territories of Australia. I've put in ACT, they sneak into the Jervis territory there, so I think that gets a tick. But Queensland is definitely the gold medal winner. They've got 8 species of pseudogobies, so lots of different species to go looking for over there. We're still finding new range records. We just turned Jeff I up in Brisbane the other day. We're working with Corey, one of the keen aquarists down in Adelaide. He's got some samples in and they definitely look like Jeff I, so that's a good range extension. So I'm sure if you go out looking for gobies, now that we've got all the new information, you'll find some new things. NT's pretty well off, and Western Australia comes in with the bronze. And this is the new little mini species. You can see it's got a unusual vertical black stripe in the dorsal fin, lots of little spots in the male. So it'd be really interesting to see. These are preserved specimens, but to see what the real one looks like, we have no idea at this point, but assume it'll be grey blob with a bit of colour. So in conclusion, there's lots to be discovered still. The need for taxonomists and people being involved in taxonomy, whether that's citizen science through to studying and getting involved, is greater than ever. There's just so much to be found, and it's important because if we don't know what's there, we can't look after it, we can't monitor the environment. So we're still even at the baseline data phase, trying in remote areas, places where we think are pristine, but even in places in your own backyard. Middle of Port Adelaide, we found 5 new records of gobies just in town there. You do need an eye for detail, so hopefully through the talk I've shown that the grey blobs do have lots of different features on them to look at. So once you're empowered with that knowledge, it's really exciting to then go through your tanks and say, oh, that is different to that one. And then a lot of times our leads come from aquarists that see something different. And I always say to them, trust your eye and pass the details on, because often you watch the fish in the fish tanks all the time and get to know them very well, and then get to see the differences once they're settled in full colours rather than covered in mud when we're out in the mangroves. So certainly ANGFA and related groups have a big role to play in citizen science and species discovery. And that applies not just to pseudogobies, but many other groups of gobies and fish, from pygmy perch to galactids to hardyheads and rainbow fish. Everyone is, lots of people are still involved with that. So thanks for listening, and stay safe wherever you are. And yeah, we'll have a look at some of those questions now.
Awesome. Thanks very much for that, Michael. That was quite the tour.
All right, where are we up to?
Yeah, excellent. Very good.
That was really good.
Yep, very thorough. Hey, Michael, do these gobies need to have a saltwater cycle, or can they just stay in pure fresh for a while?
There's some that don't need fresh, but it depends on your tap water. So as I think I mentioned, Melbourne tap water is very soft. So you do need to add some general hardness or a little bit of salt in Melbourne, but Adelaide tap water is very alkaline, and you can pretty much keep them normally. In Darwin, it's the same. You do need to add a bit of salt. When I say a bit of salt, you can just do maybe every 2nd or 3rd water change, a small amount of salt. You can keep them in fully planted tanks. Don't need to put enough salt in that kills the plants. A lot of plants like high KH and GH anyway, so the fish will do just well. So yeah, if in doubt, you just give them a salt water once every couple of months, just maybe 10% seawater, and that's enough to get them through. Certainly all the ones I've kept anyway. Some of the more marine ones, maybe the racing stripe goby, you probably have that in a nano tank dedicated anyway, so you could probably give them a bit more salt. I think they'd breed better if you had them in salt water as well.
Thanks.
All right, let's have a look at some questions. Cuttlefish aren't fish. Well, curator fish covers all sorts of things from jellyfish, cuttlefish, just what you get when you're stuck in that pigeonhole. What goby is in southeast Queensland? The yellow triangle with the dot in the middle. Yellow triangle on the tail. Is that question from Roundy?
That was relative to the map.
Yeah, so
okay,
there's a whole bunch of blue around Brisbane, blue dots, and then there's this yellow triangle.
All right, I'll get the map back up. Here we are. Where do I share my screen again?
It was the dot in the triangle, Michael. I asked the same question, but it was on your MDNA only. The dot with the MDNA only. No, go back to your
I just got to find a map.
Go back to your key. Yeah,
at the top. That was the racing stripe goby.
Yes. No, see at the bottom of your candidate species, there's an MDNA only with a spot in it. Yep, that one.
So that's not just, so that's all the sites. So you can see there's a couple up here that have a dot in them, and that's not really relevant. It's just we had different types of genetic data just to show in the genetic study that some were, so it doesn't affect the species. We found that there was no hybrids. So more the shape, don't worry about the dots, the shape and the color. That's just out of the paper. So the orange triangle is, the banded, etc. So that's from the genetics paper. I'll update that when I do the Fishes of Sahul follow-up article. I'll put all that in there. Make some special maps.
Hey, Michael, with the blue spots, I did some GoProing down at Anglesey and with Greg and Greg Wallace, and they sort of hunted in packs. When you just leave the GoPro and they're just moving around, they sort of hunch together and go forward. They're sort of like a bit of a pack animal.
Yeah, for sure. They the pseudogobies do live in loose groups. I wouldn't call them schools, but they and they just sort of graze on the bottom looking for. They're pretty omnivorous, so they'll eat little bloodworms or algae and detritus as well. So some of the others are predatory and would hunt a bit more. I've seen some gobies, they follow bigger fish around, and when the bigger fish disturb the habitat, the little fish come in looking for snacks and things as well.
I remember mud puddling when I was in Western Australia when I was a kid, and there used to be some really big gobies under the rocks on the riverbanks. Like they would have been 4 or 5 inches. What type of goby are they? Big guys.
Whereabouts, in estuary or?
In Swan River.
Probably bridal gobies, maybe?
Yeah, they look fairly plain. They didn't look as pretty as a bridal goby.
Probably the sand goby for Vonogobius. There's the lateralis or one of the other ones.
Okay.
They're pretty common in the swan. I think there was some picture of in the seine net at the start. Oh yeah, I like that observation. The cryptocentroides, they are good to catch on hooks. You can fish a lot of these bigger gobies on hooks. It's a good way to get them out of the rocks that you can't otherwise, or bait traps with pilchards in them works really well. Oh, Peter's answered that. Wilson I's getting around. Wake up, Jeff. Queenslander, yeah, can have the gobies, I guess, if that's all you need. Any other ID questions?
There was one there from Heidi. Are other gobies that aren't pseudogobies still gobies?
Definitely, yep. So there's 1,500 gobies. Pseudogobies are a group of gobinelline gobies, and then so yeah, they're all gobies. Everything except for the gudgeons is kind of when you start to go into gobioids, which is the bigger grouping as you go up. So yep, there's lots of different gobies. I should have put a little broader taxonomy slide. That's a good idea for next time. In Victoria, can blue spot gobies, glass gobies and largemouth gobies handle full fresh when hardness is raised up? Good question. I think that's, Henry, I think that is the same as I said earlier. You probably need to give them salt every now and then. But I have done it before in Adelaide with harder water with no issues needing salt for all three of those gobies. So it'd be a good little article. Take some observations and write it up.
Yes.
The orange dot in Tasmania. So there is a population in Tasmania where the eastern blue spot goby and the Swan River goby do hybridize. So in northeast Tasmania, we found pure individuals, but a couple of hybrids. That's what the orange dot represented down there. There was one down in the bottom of Tasmania as well. That was a pure one. So what can you expect to find around 1770 in Gladstone? You can find, I reckon,
lots.
5 pseudogobias at least. Another 4 or 5 Mugilla gobias, the mangrove gobies, glass gobies. If I want to get, and that's only just in the mangroves. If you get out a little bit around the mouth of creeks, being careful for crocodiles, you'll find heaps of nice little gobies out there too. There's a lot of bigger gobies. What else is there? Some of the big toothy centra gobies, they're quite good. So I'd love to know, because I haven't really I've done Townsville to Cairns and Brisbane area, but I need to get to a bit of that middle ground as well in Queensland to get a few of the other ones. Peter's done a bit of work through there and I've got his samples, but haven't had a look too much. So be interesting to see what we catch and document. That's another good process.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
Just what do you reckon is a good coastal spot in Victoria to find gobies, especially pseudogobia seals?
Yeah, so that place where we went on the field trip is a really accessible one. Cherry Lake. That's got, as the little drain that goes out from there is full of them as you go down into the salt there.
Yep.
I don't think you guys are allowed out of home at the moment, are you?
Yeah, not now. No.
In the future.
In the future.
I'm sure Glenn Briggs supplied a lot of the gobies for us. He could give you some great tips if you join up to ANGFA and get in touch with him. So he's got samples from Gippsland all the way through to Melbourne as well. So pretty much anywhere you see a bit of seagrass, like little eelgrass on the top, or mangroves, or even just somewhere sheltered. So a lot of the mouths of the creeks going into the harbour are really good. So that's part of the fun, looking at what you can find. At night with a torch is really good in Melbourne because you don't get too attacked by things. You can see them out and about. Yeah.
I seem to remember Elwood Canal had a few blue spots in it, so that was a pretty easy place to collect.
Yeah, Western Port. There's a few patches in Western Port that are part of a national park, but outside of that, there's a lot of good mangroves and drains and things.
Oh, no, I wasn't really interested in collecting, just for observing.
Yeah, no, definitely. You can see nighttime is good. Yeah.
The creek and the wetlands that flow out through Torquay are pretty good for blue spots as well.
Yeah, I'm more on the east, so.
Oh, okay.
I was thinking more
Damien, can I suggest Blind Bite in Western Port Bay? That's a great goby spot.
Thanks, Greg. I was just typing.
Heard of it. Yep.
I've got a question here from Steve. It's about rainbow fish, so that's banned from tonight. I'll tell you. We're on about gobies.
There was one there about what are the best species suitable for aquariums?
In whereabouts are we talking?
Desert goby. Desert gobies.
Which ones? The best ones I found were the yellow finned one, the little miniature one, because it's great. You can have them in a 12-inch tank with a tiny little sponge filter and a bit of sand on the bottom, and they're just out feeding all day if you put them in a little sunlit area. They're really good. It's just a matter of getting hold of them, really. There's a few, like Dave and Corey, are slowly getting into sort of commercial markets for these things as well. So keep your eye, you can order them into your local aquarium shops if you can't catch them yourself. I think blue spot gobies are still simple but great. You know, they've the southern ones, they really tame up. You can breed them in fresh water. Just put a little rock in, a bit of plants, and they go really well. And the others just depends on your preference, like whether you want big tanks with lots of different species or just nano species aquariums. So again, the glass gobies and pandacas and things go really well. They're more schooling, so you can have them in the midwater and feed them the brine shrimps, and then drop your algae wafers down to the little benthic feeding yellowfin goby or racing stripe goby or whatever one you put in. None of them are really predatory, so you can put them in with blue eyes, small blue eyes, like Cyana dorsalis is a really good tank mate. Or Pacific blue eyes are probably a bit too aggressive for the gobies, but anything like that would be a good match. They do well with the shrimps, the Caridina shrimps, as long as you don't want babies in your tank. The shrimps, but the gobies will eat the baby shrimps, but won't attack the adults normally. So.
What about hardy heads?
Yeah, that'd work. The hardy heads won't bother the gobies. Again, you might just need to shift to the algae wafers so you can get the pellet and the food down to where gobies will get it, because the hardy heads will pick off all the flake food or whatever. But the hardy heads and gobies will share those little pellets as well, so it's a good way to feed the fish.
All right, Michael. So if you could go to 2 places in Australia, collect gobies, where would you go?
Probably places I haven't been yet. So I want to go to Broome, play around in those massive. It's got even bigger tides than Darwin, so there's 8-metre tides there, and then just kilometres of mudflat to go play in. I have even found a patented mud boot where you can actually walk on waist and chest deep mud and just sort of cruise across the top. I need to get a video and show that one day. So that's one. And probably, I guess, obviously New Guinea, southern New Guinea. We've got some samples from over there, but it's obviously a lot more diverse than we know. So getting into some of the lowland mangrove and tidal areas around there to fill in some gaps in coverage, but also to potentially find new things. I guess for all of our freshwater groups like the rainbow fish and that, New Guinea's more diverse than Australia. So I'm hedging bets. Even things where all the cool northeast New Guinea, where you get the peacock gudgeons and all the cool rainbow, weirdo blue eyes. There's an endemic little Magilla gobies there that I don't have any tissues of to put into the tree yet. Forgot its name, but it's a cool little one. So yeah, definitely New Guinea and Broome.
Michael, did you ever survey the interjunal swale lakes in Western Australia? There used to be one called Perry Lakes, and there was a couple of other big ones, but they had a small goby in them that seemed to be endemic to the area, and it's not linked to rivers, it's not linked to the ocean. Been very separate for a long time. So do you ever survey those lakes?
I haven't been there, but we certainly examined specimens for genetics and morphology in our study, and they came out as the typical Western blue spot goby, Swan River goby. But what you find is that they have been there a long time, since different sea levels or different mega floods that connected those lakes up, or before they became isolated. And they do look different in some of those habitats where the water's really clear and the substrate. So that does influence how they appear as well when you get gobies in different habitats. So
oh, great. Good to know the blue spots. Fantastic.
Yeah, there's not a lot of other ones that stretch into freshwater in WA. It's pretty much the main one.
Are there many places in Victoria to find largemouth gobies?
Yeah, but there's a bit of a trick to it. They do like seagrass, so Gippsland is really good for them. But we did get them in the rivers in Melbourne and even jetties around Melbourne in Port Phillip Bay. You need to look on vertical surfaces. So I think I showed that photo of West Lakes where I was scraping my net along the cement wall. That's where we got a lot of redder gobies. They like to live in amongst structure on vertical surfaces or seagrass, but yeah, that's how I found them. And they're really good to spotlight at night. So if you sort of walk along boardwalks or jetties at night, poke around the pylons, you might find them that way. But that's half the fun, trying to find where they live. I don't know if anyone's caught them in Victoria recently or before lockdowns.
Just down Gippsland Lakes.
Yeah. They like the seagrass there, yeah.
Greg, what was that one that we caught at Chinaman's Creek that was really quite pretty, at where the creek came into the bay?
Goby,
Yeah.
I'd have to check my photos. I can't remember.
Okay, I'll send it up to Michael, but it wasn't a small snub nose. It was something else, but it's very pretty.
Put on it, John, and I'll identify it for you.
Sure, no worries. Actually, we should really do a bit of a pitch for INAT because it's a great place for us to start getting our records up so everyone can access them, compared to the ANGFA website.
And you can get some instant feedback. It's a good way to get them to us for ID. You know, they can sit there until we get time, or just tag your. I think I'm Fish Magnet, MAGNT on INAT. So if you need to tag me, I'll be able to look at them and ID them.
Yeah,
it's always great. And it's a great way to learn of what's in different places. Like some of the things that turn up on there are really good because you just got to be out and looking around, and it's just, you know, some things you see really rarely, and just the more people out looking, the better.
There's a couple more questions.
From Luciano, how are we going, Luciano? Older personalities, I don't know. They live in it's pretty hard to observe some of those ones around Adelaide, but it could be quite interesting. Certainly some of the ones in West Lakes are really active and out more than you would expect. And I think that's because they're not, one of the reasons they're bolder in where gobies invade new places is they don't have their normal predators. And certainly places like West Lakes, you know, they don't have a lot of competition from other similar gobies. So I think it probably would be true if we looked into it a bit more once we drill below just working out what's where level. It's some of the amazing things. Once we know what we've got, then we can start to look at some of these things. Like there were, even within pseudogobies, there were different environmental preferences. Like the racing stripe goby lived only in mangroves. You couldn't really find it too far from there. Same with the one with the yellow on its tail. Whereas the Hosie's goby was living in freshwater streams, and same with the black spotted goby. So yeah, different habitats had different species for sure.
Carl had a question as to what was the most challenging goby to collect?
Trying to think, probably those worm gobies. They're just the needle in a haystack. So they're the big long critters with the huge teeth. So the only time you can really get to them is during Darwin's spring tides, which is in October, November. So picture 35 degrees temperature, 80% humidity, middle of the day, out in the mud, miles from the shore, and then sweating like crazy trying to dig around the mud. So yeah, they're tough to get out, and it's a tough place to sample, but pretty rewarding when you eventually found one. We, you know, only get one or two of them.
Trying to avoid the crocs as well.
Well, low tide's fine for crocs, unless you step on them like that guy did the other day in a wetland. But yeah, we're always very conscious of crocodiles. So there's some challenging places where you're looking over your shoulder a lot as well. Some of the other ones are just getting to really remote places is probably another challenging thing to do. Yeah. But yeah, I guess those mud flat dwelling ones are the harder ones to get a hold of.
Steve Hume chucked a question in the chat about whether there's more gobies in artesian bores and anything new that's likely to show up there.
It's good to see he's back on the gobies off the rainbow fish. I'm sure new populations might show up, but I'm not sure there's going to be new species. I think you're going to touch on the edge bass and stuff and bores a bit later on in a minute. But yeah, who knows? But we're certainly finding a lot of relatives. So the desert gobies, there has a northern Australian relative, northeastern Australian relative. I don't know what's called, the tadpole goby, ranunculus. So we're certainly finding them in some of the Gulf bores that are a long way inland. So just because the Gulf is really flat. So I'm sure you'll find different populations in different areas, but maybe not new ones. But who knows? Never say never.
Yeah, I'm not going to mention anything about edge bass and gobies, but one of the problems is that gambusia get into these bores and tend to knock off other fish, and then the bores often get cleaned out fairly regularly. So if there are fish in, then they get smashed every couple of years when they dredge the things out. So they're a bit of a tough place for some of these fish to live.
Thanks, Tony.
Dylan chucked a question in there. You see that one? The turtles.
Yeah, so we don't get a lot of turtles with the pseudogobius. The turtles don't like salt very much, so they're probably a little bit further inland, but we certainly do come across a lot of turtles in our work up in Northern Australia in general, and I've got a lot of photos and stuff that I could be happy to share on those. And we do take little toe clips for genetics as well on those things, so there's a bit of work that's happening in that space. Yeah, I guess gobies would use anything as habitat, turtle shells and whatnot.
Do you know how hard blue spot goby fry are to raise?
Yeah, they're tiny. That's a good point. Of all these, so pretty much of all the gobies I've talked about tonight, only the clematic gobies, the desert gobies and the tadpole goby have large eggs and larvae that you can feed Artemia. The rest of the Megilogobius and Pseudogobius all have tiny 2 millimeter larvae. Because they're in estuaries, they sort of use a broadcast spawning method, so the larvae can escape and find new little habitats, find the right place, drift into the good spots. So it is possible. There's people that have raised some of the different Megilogobius, but you need to get some of the foods like, I guess, rotifers or something else, ciliates even. So have a chat to Dave Wilson. He's been trying for years to try and work out, crack the formula. But certainly overseas, Megilogobius chule, I think it has been bred in aquariums, and some of the other ones are small larvae. So it's possible if you get into your aquaculture or your live foods. I think it's mostly just working out the salinity that the larvae survive at. So I think that's a key thing as well.
Have you had the picture of the tire there? One of the best places I ever caught gobies was near Mackay. There was a big pile of that orange mesh all tangled up that they normally put around a work site to stop people going in. And it was just absolutely teeming with Megilogobius. Have you found any good human waste that gobies have liked particularly more so than any other?
Just like Besser blocks and bricks. In Port Adelaide, that was the best place. As soon as you saw those, you knew something that wasn't too big, so it weighs itself, but so it's easy enough to make tunnels under. And yeah, they were quite good. Any like bottles is always funny when you find a bottle and you tip it out and see what's been living inside it. You get blennies and gobies. One thing I did that once, and I think I had my son when he was little. He came in helping me catch gobies, and he tipped out a bottle and caught one of those little oyster blennies, and he was putting it on his hand and thought it was great until it took a big chunk of his hand out. So do be careful of blennies when you're playing around. I don't think he's come out fishing with me again since, which is a pain. Anyway. And yeah, you do get you got to be careful of bull rats and stonefish, as well as crocodiles and mosquitoes and things as well. I probably should have put a few extra disclaimers in at the start of the talk.
Biohazards, as Dave calls them, 4 meter biohazards.
I saw another comment from Tony Gill there that they've been putting artificial reefs type habitats with submerged pots on the harbour walls, which that's, really good for gobies and blennies. In the fish tank, half flower pots are a really great way, for breeding lots of gobies, particularly the desert gobies. But if you're going to try and breed the pseudogobies, they like a bit of a tighter cavern, so you've got to bury the pot right down, so it's only got about a centimetre entrance to get them breeding.
Yeah, those oyster blennies are mean. Seen a few in the rock pools, they're just mean.
Yeah, they're aggro and they've got sharp teeth.
Do we have any news on when Helen's book's coming out?
Don't ask, poor Helen. Questions like that.
That's a loaded question. Our publisher has just galloped off to Venezuela and Colombia because he doesn't think COVID exists.
Ooh.
Whoa.
This is Heiko.
Ah, yes, dear Heiko.
I was going to say his name wasn't Mr. Blair.
Yeah, we're hoping to finish the first volume the end of this year, but COVID is difficult because some of the photos we're trying to track, the people who own the photos, they store them at their institutions and they can't get into their institutions because they live in the UK or the US. So we're both Doug and I are taking a bit of a break from the book while we try and work out alternate ways of illustrating some of these things. Yeah. So just cross your fingers and hope. That's all we can do at the moment.
Thanks, Helen.
More time to work on the other Gobies, hey, Helen, in the meantime.
Oh yeah, I'm working on, I've done a whole pile of work on volume 2. The rest of the tridentigerines, which is the older name for the Gobianellines, just to annoy everybody. I've got, Doug will probably take a back seat for the rest of the next 2 volumes. He wants to finish some other projects. So I've got four people to replace Doug. One in Singapore, one in Croatia, one in Sydney, and where's the other one? And one in Hawaii. So we're scattered around, but we will get it done eventually before we all go mad.
Fabulous.
And I'm going to drop out now. I was really happy to see so many ANGFA faces and to listen to Michael give a really nice talk. Working with him on pseudogobius was great fun because he doesn't like working with a microscope, but he's got this brilliant observational, he sees things that most people don't see, and which is why he kept finding all these things. I'd be working away and he said, but this is different. So I'd have to go back to the microscope and have a look and find, oh yeah, there is a scale behind the eye. It is actually different, yes, etc., etc. So thanks very much, Michael. I'm going to go, and my eyes have had enough of computers for the entire day. So thank you very much, and it's been great to be amongst ANGFA people. See you later.
Yeah, great seeing you, Helen.
Thanks, Helen.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Great to see you.
Normally when Michael comes out with us, he sees too many things that he wishes he'd never seen before.
Like what?
Yeah, you've got to stop taking off your pants, Peter.
You got to take them off at some point in time. You can't wear them all day and night.
Everyone sees that when you go out with Peter.
A horror.
I've got to tell you, Michael takes mud puddling to a different level when he gets into the mangroves. He's talking about mud that's 1 meter deep, and he takes about half an hour to move 1 meter. Meanwhile, there's all these crocodile slides in and out of the mangroves.
So, John, you're a bit pixelated there. Your speech is coming out a bit stilted as well.
That's normal, Leo.
Did you hear any of it about mud puddling with Michael?
That's better. Say that again.
Yeah,
Say that again now.
I've turned my video off, but when Michael mud puddles, he's normally in mud that's about 1 meter deep, and it takes him about half an hour to move 1 meter. And meanwhile, there's all these crocodile slide marks coming in and out of mangroves into the area where he's mud puddling. So,
okay, heard you a lot better that time.
yeah, sorry about that.
No worries.
Michael, that was a great talk. Thank you.
Always great to see so many people here and interested in gobies. We'll get there. Get people out looking around. Send me some photos. So we'll
Thanks a lot, Michael. Really enjoyable. Thanks a lot.
Hey, nice and cold down there.
Very cold. I'm outside.
T-shirt weather. I'm sweating.
So if folks want to hang around for a few minutes, we can keep chatting a little bit, but I was going to give people a quick tour of my own fish facilities and stuff if you're interested.
Yeah.
I've just got a few short videos I can play just so folks can see what I've got. And then the idea is if somebody wants to actually show their fish off at the next meeting, let us know. And it's just, I just walked around with a camera and a phone and just took a few short videos, and it's quite easy to do. It's easy just to chuck it up on the screen and share it. So if anyone else wants to share their fish, whether it's 1 tank or 200 tanks, feel free to let us know and we'll put you in for the next meeting.
Hey, Peter, can I have a quick word with Michael?
Go for it.
Yeah.
Michael, Jason Schaefer and myself are heading up to Lower Archer again in about 4 weeks' time. We're going to do a reasonable collection up there.
Well, I'd love some Tenellus if you're going there.
Absolutely, mate. No problems. Easy.
Yeah, we've pretty much got all the other pops of Tenellus. They're in Normanton as well, but we haven't got them that. But it looks like there's a bit of structure up and down the Cape, so it'd be good to get another population to fill the gap. on that species.
Yeah, that's why I asked about the archers earlier. We're going to try and collect as much as we can. We're just waiting on permissions to come through from the TOs.
Yeah, great. What other things do you normally get? No, probably not so many gobies, but it's gone.
No worries.
Yeah, I'll drop you a message as well.
Okay, thanks, mate.
Oh, you might, Steve, you might get the Glossogobius nanus as well up that way. Do you ever see those? The little miniature.
No, I actually haven't been in that area at all. Jason's the only one that I know that's been in there.
They're a great little aquarium fish. Anyway, back to Peter, sorry. But yeah.
Attention, guys, may I interrupt here for a second?
Go for it.
Yes, it's been 30 years since I've been in the aquarium, fish industry for a while. I used to be under ANT Society under Phil Casey, the late Phil Casey. He told me a story once where there's gobies in the river up north, and it was flowing very fast. He showed me photos, and I think they'd rival the desert gobies. And it's a real bitch to catch them because you've got to lift a rock and grab a goby, but it's very fast flowing. I don't know if they've been rediscovered yet. You know anything about it?
Is that around the Daintree area?
Sorry, mate, I don't know, but it's a very fast flowing river. It sounds like big rocks, and they are actually beautiful gobies. I was mind blown.
I'd love to know some more because it'd be cool to see what they might be.
They are definitely fresh water, definitely fast flowing.
Yeah, Shane, what's the nearest town?
No idea, sorry, mate. It's been 30 years. You got people that knew Phil Casey more than me.
Sounds like Stifodons.
That's what I'm thinking, because he went up the Daintree once.
Yeah. Very fast flowing.
I don't think Phil is no longer with us. I think he passed away about a decade ago, sadly.
No, he did. Yeah, he's a great guy. Great guy. So, any other gobies you wish to find around southeast Queensland? Me and another guy are just going from river to river, just taking photos, seeing what fish are there, something's unique, might take it home.
Oh, yeah, like if you can get some photos, those little, just anything, little Perspex box or a Ziploc bag that you can get photos of the fish, that's a good way to do it. And then you can get some IDs. And then, yeah, if you get them back to fish tanks.
Yeah, I don't know if Sebastian's online at the moment, but that's mainly what he's doing. I'm just around and driving around and see what's like every fortnight. It's all on YouTube.
Sounds good. I know Robert Pulverenti's quite a lot of cool gobies around Queensland there. He's been sending me photos for years, so we'll better find each other there.
Yep, okay.
Yeah, Michael, the guy that he's talking about calls himself Murky Seb on YouTube. So his name's Sebastian, but he calls himself Murky Seb.
I'll have a look, see what he's been up to.
No worries.
He's been doing a lot of just sticking cameras in, like GoPros in the water and just recording a lot of stuff, and then he spends a fair bit of time then editing it. And some of the stuff he's coming out with it's actually quite nice. It's quite informative. It's actually quite nice seeing native fish in their native environment.
I know the one you're talking about.
It's quite amusing because he has sort of a Steve.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, it's got long hair.
And here we have the fabulous purple spotted goby.
We've done this recently, and you got some good shots. The great expedition, nice fish, but the clarity of the water is phenomenal. The giant bell, I've never seen giant bell that big before in Pine Rivers. We found good populations, schools of rads, and freshwater mother so close to Petrie, it wasn't funny. You'll have some good photos coming up. I'll make sure of it.
Yeah, awesome.
Go ahead, Peter.
All right, so we have a couple of different fish rooms at work. We have a little room in an animal house, and we also have a glass house that I took over from the plant people. So this is our smaller room. We don't have a huge number of fish at work at the moment, so there's a lot of empty tanks, but which is good because there's not as much to take care of. Most of the fish in this room are stuff associated with Carl's PhD. So I'll just play this. I'll just mute the sound on the video since you don't need to hear that. So we're doing a lot of our carp gudgeon stuff in these little tanks on the left. And then we've just got a bunch of mostly 20 and 50 litre tanks on the other side with lots of rainbow fish in them that we've recently brought back from 3 different populations from the Dawson River in central Queensland. And then we got a few from the Atherton Tablelands and up around Cairns as well. So this is just a bit of a rotation around the room. We're currently breeding some F1 hybrid rainbow fish to produce an F2 to do a bunch of genetic linkage mapping on with SNPs. So we've been pulling out mops, and I don't know, there's 40 or 50 babies in those tanks there, a bit hard to see. That was for Chris Larman, if she's still there, is some little purple spotted gudgeons that Rob and I collected from Toowoomba. There's some bald carp gudgeons there, or one of the undescribed ones that's only found in a couple of creeks in New South Wales. Those are some of the Uchi Splendida hybrids we've been playing with. And then these are just some Splendida from Bruce Hanson's place. Some Dubulei from the upper Dawson River.
Luxuriant plant growth, Peter.
What do you need plants for? But a few carp gudgeons there. There's a few remnant carp gudgeons from earlier stuff. All right, I'll pull up the next one here. So this is our glass house. So this was where we did all the running river breeding and stuff. So all these tanks on the left were where we're raising all the babies in. We had lots of vinegar eels going. I've just got a few set up again now. For those of you who might recognize the tanks on the right, maybe not recognize them, but I'll wait till we get to those tanks. So this is where we're raising all the baby fish from Running River. We've bred about 6,000 or 8,000 of them in this glass house. These are the tanks we were breeding them in. We're just holding a few rainbows at the moment in here, some from Bruce Hanson's place, some of our F1 hybrids. Just a few F1 Running Rivers and some Darling Hardy heads of Carl's that he's got. Then on this side of the room, we've just got a few large tanks. So for those of you that were ever in Elaine Turner and Ron Turner's fish room, so these are his old tanks. They're originally made by Lance Smith, probably back in the late 1960s.
What's with that goldfish, Peter?
The goldfish we had for making green water for growing Daphnia. That's the only reason I had those. I had them
for the goldfish.
That's the first time I've ever heard that excuse.
Hey, Peter, are they steel tanks with putty or are they siliconed in?
I think they're putty.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah. And I think it's actually stainless steel.
Perfect.
They don't rust. It doesn't matter what you do to them, they never rust. They weigh an absolute ton. It takes 4 of us to pick up these tanks. They're heavy as hell.
Is there any update in the name for the running rivers yet?
Ask Michael that question.
Michael?
So these are the brood stock that we were using when we bred the fish back in 2016. So I've just got them split across a couple tanks. The fish are pretty big now, so these are 6-ish years old or so, and they're usually fairly decent. Of course, when you want to show the fish and make them look pretty, they don't behave for you very well. So some days you walk in the glass house and they look spectacular. Other times you walk in and they look a bit ordinary. That's a pile of Malanda rainbow fish from Wallace Road. Again, part of Carl's experiments looking at hybrid zones and rainbow fish. There's a few more running rivers down the bottom there. Then these are a whole pile of Splendida Malanda hybridy things from the Ithaca River in the North Johnson. The only Splendida that look any good are the ones that have hybridized with something else. You can see these guys have got really nice kind of red on the bodies and red on the tails. They're quite a nice fish. Yeah, so
And
these.
are you studying them? Or are they?
Yeah, so a little bit of both. So there's actually tons of hybrid rainbows in the wild. There's lots of places where rainbow fish have hybridized in the past, and you can see that in their genetics. There's places where they're actively hybridizing today, such as the Dawson River. So you have Dubulei in the upper part of the system, Splendida in the bottom part of the system, and then in the lower part of the Dawson River, they're hybridizing between each other. In other places where Splendida and Dubulei come into contact, you've often ended up with them blending together into something a little bit different. So Deepwater River or Deepwater Creek is the classic population. So they're Splendida, but they have a bit of Dubulei mixed in with them. And there's some other populations around 1770 that are hybridized as well. So one of the questions is, why do some of these things blend together? And then why do other populations remain separated with a hybrid zone in between? And then the stuff in the Atherton tablelands is a bit more focused on why is Malander rainbow fish being replaced by Splendida as they're moving upstream and kind of hybridizing them out of existence. But you often get around Darwin's a good place. So often when Nigrans and Australis co-occur in some of the little creeks, little coastal creeks, they tend to have hybridized in the past. Then this top tank here is just a bit of a junk tank. I don't know if Keith is still online or not, but your Ithaca fish are in, your Thiaki fish are in this tank. See those guys in the middle of orangey fins looping around? The other big rainbows in here are mostly from Upper Running River, the introduced ones that we had from Carl's experiments for his master's degree. But you can see the big orangey guys there. Those are the Malander Splendida hybrids from Thiaki Creek.
That's a big goldfish.
Bloody big goldfish.
Is that Alan goldfish?
Yeah, one of those is Alan's goldfish.
Goldfish.
No, this is the tank behind me. This is just a bit of a, so the tank's only half full at the moment, so we're treating the fish because they got a little bit sick, so I neglected to change their water quite quickly enough. Are you happy with those plants? Does that make you happy?
Yeah. Hey, oh, you can't hear me. Oh, you can't hear me. You want to see a live? Look.
Just be quiet for a minute.
He wants me to shut up.
We can't hear you.
Is water in COVID shortage, is it?
No, it's just saves me putting twice as much salt in the tank.
Here it is. There's it live.
Salt is expensive.
Yeah, cheapskate.
Yeah, but it's twice as much water to take out, and twice as much to chuck down the bathtub.
Well, why have any water at all? Why not just have enough to cover the fish?
Yeah.
What are the galaxiids in there?
Why don't you have some mud skippers?
So there's a whole bunch of different beasties in here. So the galaxids are climbing galaxids. They're actually from an introduced population. The salmon catfish in the middle, I call him Hoover. He goes around and hoovers up everything. There's some little hurdles catfish swimming around in there. That both of those we brought back from the Dawson River on this last trip. And there's just a few random rainbows in there. A couple of the Uchi and Splendida parental hybrids. Fish were used to generate the hybrids. And there's a couple of Running River rainbows and some Malander rainbows. One or two other things in there. Some ambassus, some hardy heads. A couple of Kanzichthys in there as well. One little smelt. So it's a bit of a pile of everything. The Brevipinis are a bit of a problem actually because they're pretty aggressive and they eat like you would not believe.
Send them down to me. I'll look after them for you.
You can have all the ones you want. There's thousands of them up here in places.
Good.
Don't you believe in gravel?
Gravel's for wankers.
If you put on your video, oh, look at that messy table. You took a picture of that. Oh my God.
That's our dining table when
Their dining table.
when Rochelle doesn't cover it with all her crap.
Oh, it's bananas.
He's a disgrace. Get into him.
Oh my God.
Peter's been cooking again.
I think you need to learn how to use Photoshop.
Hey.
So the best part about having fish tanks next to the dinner table is while your wife's prattling on, you can just watch the fish doing this stuff and pretend that she's not there. Isn't that right,
Okay,
darling?
look at the Rochelle thing and you can see Peter. He got mad at me, he wouldn't turn on his camera. Look,
All
don't
right,
you want to see him?
Can you be quiet for a minute?
No, they want to see you.
You're interrupting the presenter here.
Shut
Be
up.
quiet.
No, we're happy for her to take over, Pete.
So this is just a bit of a mix of different stuff. There's some carp gudgeons and one striped gudgeon down the bottom there from about 2013. Just some other random carp gudgeons on the bottom on the other side, and there's a few different. These are some of the F1 hybrid rainbows that I had just to split them out. Some little Tenellis from Dave Wilson up there. And the top tank of rainbows is actually one of my favorites, but they were not behaving that day, so I didn't really show them. But they're Fletcher Creek rainbows from the Vertican system. I'll see if I can get some footage and show them next time. And then this is just a bit of a mix of fish. So there's the orangey guys at Molo Creek, Molanda rainbows. And then there's a couple of Hellhole Creek fish in there, a couple of Radnor Centris from Rob Wager I got a few years back, and a Lone Hardy head in the Can 60s too, I think. But anyway, that's my fish tanks that I've got scattered around the place.
Very good. Thank you, Peter.
And yeah, I don't like gravel. Too much of a pain to clean. Paint your fish tanks. You don't need gravel.
Yeah, your
Peter,
fish
if
look
it's-
healthy.
If it's any consolation, you grow Java fern far better than I can.
It's the only thing I don't kill.
I kill it. I can't keep it alive.
Dr. Death.
Dave Wilson sent me down a whole bunch of plants. They're all long gone. None of them survived.
Oh,
Is that because you've got no substrate?
No, I put some in pots.
Yeah,
I
that's
do have
going to be
some,
going all right.
No, it's
there was one other plant in the tank, so I can't remember what it's called, but it's kind of not a swordtail, but it's vaguely like a swordtail.
It looks like a cryptical windy eye.
Yeah, I think that's the one.
You had 3 species of crib.
Yeah, that grows really well. So I just have them in little pots.
A monkey can grow that.
Yeah,
I
well,
can
that's
grow a
right.
Rubus like there's no tomorrow, but I can't grow Val.
There's a monkey next to me now.
That's really
So, Peter, the tank that's over your shoulder, is that half full because you elected to be half full, or is that ready for a water change and maybe a bit of extra salt to, not shock the fish?
No, they're being salted at the moment. So
Okay.
I left them half full because I wasn't sure if I'd have to treat them with antibiotics or not.
Yep.
But I threw about 1 kilo of salt in there. So
You know,
Just
salt's not that good.
throwing another kilo of salt in and then more water to take the bathtub to chuck down the drain.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just seeing Rachel's now coming up in the feed here.
yeah, this is the live.
She doesn't like it when she's not the center of attention.
No, I'm showing the fish, you mother wonderful.
Hey, Graham.
Yeah, mate.
For Java fern, all of my tanks, I basically pull 2 buckets out every week from each tank. I don't do any water changes at all. And basically the Java fern is like growing like elephant grass in Africa.
It just gets this black spot in it and then it just rots away. I've got one tank that it grows in.
Java fern doesn't like conditions to change.
No.
It likes very, very stable conditions.
Yeah.
Look, Peter, I support your approach, mate. I have 2 tanks with plants in it, which are display tanks. Everything else is a bare tank. No gravel, doesn't complicate shit. No plants, doesn't complicate shit.
It's like hanging your picture frames on the wall with no picture.
Well, there's plants. Look.
No,
Yeah,
that's
but
good.
You've got to be
Thank
practical about these
When
things.
you're breeding or studying stuff, the picture doesn't matter.
No, but it's the
Yeah,
psychology of
right.
the fish. The fish psychology, they love a natural environment. They hate swimming from one glass end to another.
Mate, my fish love it as long as I feed them. They don't give a shit about anything else.
Yeah, that's right.
Sorry, I
Feed their tank.
think I'm going crazy here with watching Rachel and Peter's screens at the same time. Going cross-eyed. Because one's up the top, one's down the bottom.
I think it's important we end on a positive note.
Yeah, great Zoom meeting, guys. Well done.
Hey, Peter, you did mention to ask Michael about the running rivers.
I don't think you're going to get an answer from Michael about running rivers.
Where's Michael?
Hello?
Where'd he go?
He's there.
Oh, okay. I was just curious, that's all.
I try not to ask that question too often.
Oh, okay.
In 4 weeks, we'll do this again, and Graham Finson will be hosting.
Where's Michael?
I don't know. I think he's dropped off.
He signed off.
Hey,
He's fled.
Still
when he
here.
Walked
I just
around.
don't wanna talk.
it was book week. I was Zooming all day teaching.
When he saw the gorilla mask, he was gone.
I'll get the horse head. Oh, there it is.
Peter, you're a very lucky man.
I'm not going to say a word. When are we going fishing again, Peter? Next year.
Peter, control your wife.
Love it.
All right. I'm going to wrap the meeting up.
Yeah.
Hey, Peter, are you heading back up here before the end of the year?
No, we can't go anywhere.
Oh, that's right, COVID. Sorry, mate.
One
Oh.
more thing. What is this, people? You fishmen? Are there any women here?
Yes.
Oh, good, Chris. Yes. Down with the patriarchy. What is this?
Fisco.
It's a potato crisp.
Yeah, I was going to say it's something that Peter puts on his lunch.
It's your ear.
It's an otolith from a prehistoric fish.
You're getting closer. Hey guys, thanks very much. Great night. I'm out of here. I'll talk to you again later.
I love fish scale.
Not all.
Yeah.
What is it?
It's a lungfish scale.
It's not a lungfish.
It's a lungfish scale that my friend.
No, it's a lung, not a fish scale.
It's a lungfish scale, and I guessed it.
Good job, Greg.
Guys,
It's a
thank you
lung
for joining
tetrapod
us.
scale.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great month. Stay safe, and we'll
hang
see you
up
next
yet.
time.
Yeah, see you next time, folks.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks,
Yes.
Peter.
Yes. Someone's yelling at me.
Do you want some rats and some blue eyes? I need to offload some.
Yes. Did you manage to get hold of Leo, who was actually on tonight?
I'm
He
hanging
was
up on
busy.
you. Good
He
night.
can't take me for 2 weeks.
Good night.
Well, this
Good
is going
night,
to kill it,
thank
isn't
you.
it, Greg?